and I were to record this, because we should do that, then in a second or two, give or take,
Yep. I
we
just got the notification.
we should be up and we should be live in a minute, maybe. Yes, there we are. Just make sure you mute. Okay, we're live. We are live. Welcome, welcome. Well, there's nobody here yet, so 0 people, but you watch. I give it 20 seconds. We'll have a bunch of people.
Yep.
That's usually all it takes, about 20 seconds.
We got 4.
We got 4? Oh, excellent. I'm going to try to shrink this down a little so that I don't have to look at my my ugly mug on the thing over there. I'm going to move this down a little bit. I don't have anybody. Oh, Tim's here. Hey, Tim. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. You're the first one. Missy is here. How are you, Missy? From Dublin, no less. Look at that. What time is it? What time is it in Dublin? It has to be
1 o'clock in the morning here.
It's in Scotland. It's what, 1?
Yep.
Wow.
Same in Dublin as well.
You guys are champs, man. Bobby, how you doing? Good to see you, Bobby. You guys should see me and Johnny Scotland. We're here. 6. Robert's here. Robert, how are you? Soul Dreams is here from Switzerland. Welcome from Switzerland. Bobby Harris is here from Oklahoma. Mr. What's that? I can't read that. Alex is here from Earth. Hi, Alex from Earth. Good. Earth is a good. It's a good place. Bobby Harris. Bobby, good to see you. You're here. Robert. Okay, cool. We got 11 people here. This is great. Well, welcome. You guys all know why we're here tonight. We're here to do our monthly live stream. This is the 3rd Saturday of the month, home recording made easy live stream. And I have my partner in crime, my co-host here, Johnny Lipsham from Johnny over in Scotland. And you guys have seen all the tests. You guys have been hanging out. You know what we're going to do. So tonight we're going to have some fun. At least we think it's going to be fun, right? So we're going to take questions. We're going to hang out. We'll talk about gear, plugins, whatever you guys want to talk about. Johnny and I will kind of monitor the chat together. We're going to spend some time in Studio One tonight comparing the new Fat channel from Presonus and the version 3.5 release that just came out that everybody's all excited about. We're going to pay particular attention to their vintage style emulations, their space creation, space station, whatever they call that thing. I forget. We'll look at it when we go there, right?
State modeling.
What is it called?
Space state modeling.
Space state modeling. We're going to look at the their emulation of the 1176 compressor. We're going to look at their emulation of the Pultec EQ and the LA2A. And they also make a Neve EQ, which we'll look at. But the other 3, we're going to compare those to the Universal Audio counterparts, the Waves counterparts, and we may throw in a couple of Slate Digital in there too, because Slate Digital also does an 1176. And they don't do an LA2A, but the FG401 is kind of like the LA2A Fairchild-ish. It's in that ballpark, right? So we're going to kind of compare those, and we're going to try to see or try to hear, is there, or how we want to know is how good of a job did Presonus do modeling their vintage gear compared to the guys that have been doing this for years and, you know, that charge all the money for all these plugins. And some of us are going to be very happy that the Presonus ones are probably equally as good and maybe better than some of the third-party stuff. And then other people in this chat, and maybe myself included, might be upset by that because you spent a whole lot of money on plugins that now Presonus gives you when you buy Studio One. Which can be now, I will say that when they did the console shaper, although that was pretty cool, that doesn't compare to the VCC or the NLS. I did that shootout. I did a YouTube video. They're not quite the same. I think the console.
What's the one?
I did not use. Nope, I didn't use the paid one. I should. I could probably get Johnny Geib over at the Home Studio Trainer to maybe fetch me a license for that. I'd like to try it and compare it to the Slate Digital and the NLS, which is the Waves nonlinear summing console emulation. But I just did the free one, the first one that came out. And again, you got to tip your hat to Presonus for even going down this road. Steinberg Cubase doesn't go down this road. I think Avid, Pro Tools in the past have tried to do things that were somewhat analog based, but not to this level. So, I mean, I give them a hell of a lot of credit, Presonus, to even go down this road. And I think they've done a very honorable job. with it thus far, and I think it will only get better, is my guess. So
I think
tonight
so.
we're going to do that comparison. We're going to have some fun with it. We're going to see. If you checked out my live stream kind of this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, we were talking about the Waves sale for Memorial Day weekend here in the United States. So if you go out to waves.com, I showed you audiodeluxe.com, and then that video, Johnny, if you don't know, has spawned a bunch of comments. And there was a topic that came up by there was a little back and forth between myself and someone, and then one of our other members was kind of backing me, talking about cracked plugins. And we could talk about that tonight too.
Don't get me started on that.
Yes, I was very disappointed, and I don't know if that person will show up in the chat tonight after he had a few let's just say not very appropriate things to say. I actually banned him from my channel. He was someone that had no subscribers. He was a troll, but a couple of people, I don't know if it was Robert Booth, but someone stood up and jumped in and said, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. And we'll talk about that. There's a couple of people that were kind of chiming and saying, hey, man, but this person was, whatever. Anyhow, I'll tell you that story in a second. But audiodeluxe.com has the same prices as Waves does for this Memorial Day sale. But what I found out was after the video that if you're going to buy more than one plugin, say you're going to buy 2 or 3 of these today because you want to get the sale, buy it on waves.com, because not only will you pay the same price, but when you buy a second and third plugin, they knock off an additional, I think, 20 and 30%. Okay. So if you're going to spend $100 for 3 plugins or 2 plugins, you'll get an additional 20% off, an additional $20 off your purchase, which is already, cut down to probably 10% of what the plugin normally sells for. Okay. So go check those out if you want to check out that video. If you're looking for some of the Wave stuff, they have all their plugins on sale, a lot of good deals. In the video this morning, I pointed out and recommended which ones that I personally own, that I know are good deals, that I know sound good, if you want to check those out. So we have 33 people right now watching, Johnny,
Awesome.
which is really cool. So say hello to everybody, to Johnny over in Scotland. And Johnny, what are you're going to be, and then Johnny's going to be taking over tonight as well, and he's going to do some stuff for us. What are you going to do for us, Johnny?
I am going to take you on a guided tour of the project page and all of the updates, changes that have been made. Some of them are actually a little bit subtle, and some of them not so subtle. And yet, on the Presonus live broadcast earlier this week, they kind of skirted over a couple of what I think were actually major changes that they must have spent months working on, and they kind of just like scooted over them. So, but we will get into some of that in a wee moment.
Oh, cool. So we're going to look at all the down and dirty details. I know it looks a lot different, the project page, so I'm interested to see.
Yeah, even have notes.
And Johnny's even gotten notes, spoken like a true educator. Professional educator, unlike myself, who just gets on here and starts rambling. So before we jump into Studio One, I do want to tell you this, Johnny. I haven't talked to Johnny about this. So this morning we did the video, as I said, and there was someone and it brought up a topic that I think we ought to just talk about, which was, we were talking about the deals, and someone wrote a comment and said, well, you can just get these all for free, and they left a torrent link to where you can go get all these plugins. And I responded back and says, hey man, you shouldn't steal plugins. And someone else chimed in too, and I think they're in the chat. It was either Bobby or Mike or so one of our regular listeners. They also wrote and said, hey man, you shouldn't do that. It's a snowball effect. You shouldn't steal plugins. And then this person would go back and forth and make, oh, it's this friendly sharing site, and they were trying to justify it. And I said to the person, for someone who, and Johnny, you can relate to this, and maybe some of you guys in the chat too. We have 40 people here. Wow. That maybe you guys create digital content or any kind of, product as well. And I says, if you're someone who creates a digital product like a plugin is, and you're selling it, as a way to support your family and to support your livelihood, and you're adding value and people are buying it, for some people to take that and turn around and share it on these websites is real. It's stealing, is what it is. Unless you have permission from the creator, or in this person's case, permission from Waves, because that's what we were talking about. You shouldn't do that. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you really shouldn't do that. And the person just kept making the comment that we were fools for paying for the plugins and trying to justify why should you pay for them when you could take them for free. And that just hits a real sore spot with me, for someone who half of my livelihood is around digital content. And I know, because I've found, and some great people out there have forwarded me where they were things where they see that people are taking my content and passing it off for free. And and I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that, Johnny, but it really rubs me the wrong way that, whoever, Waves or any plugin company or anyone that creates digital content, these people have families like the rest of us do, right?
Yeah.
These people work hard for a living. This is what they do. And it's a lot like, if you want to see what could happen, look at the music industry. When people started when Napster and all that stuff, and no matter where you fall on this issue, the bottom line is that digital sharing of files, music, really put a major, blow in the music industry. The reason why records don't sell anymore is because of that. And that's snowballed. And now you have iTunes and you have some other paid services and artists can get paid. But that didn't start until after the damage was already done. And if you want companies to create these great plugins, and you want companies to create these, I know people that have gotten, cracked software of Cubase, cracked software of Pro Tools. I haven't heard it about Studio One, but I've heard it about other DAWs. But if you're going to take this stuff, what that's going to mean sooner or later, these companies are going to go out of business. And then for all of us who love this, and this is what we kind of do, and this is our hobby or our profession or both, it ruins it for everybody because these products won't be here anymore. And so I try to tell everybody, look, if you can't pay for the product, then don't steal it. If you're going to take, wait for them to go on sale like the Waves does, if you're not willing to spend $39 on a plugin that you really want, you feel you have to take it for free, then maybe you're in the wrong hobby,
Yeah.
And I say the same thing about to people about my products. I sell my products and I almost give the things away to begin with. And then for people to give that away or to steal it from me, it's like, well, I don't want you buying my stuff. Then go follow somebody else. No one here is trying to rip anybody off. And if you're going to rip me off, well, then I don't want you following me, And so I don't know, Johnny, I don't know how you feel about that whole topic, but that happened today. So I did ban the person from the channel. I left a few of his comments up there, the ones that were appropriate. At the end, he was getting a little nasty, and I said, I'm not going to put up with that. But, I don't know. And I don't know how people feel about that in the chat, but.
Well, here's the thing for me. You kind of alluded to it by talking about the fact that, these plugin manufacturers, their employees have families, and they have salaries to meet. Here's the myth. The myth is that these companies make multi-millions of dollars. Right? And therefore, because they make multi-millions of dollars, nobody's going to notice the fact that you have taken a Waves CLA 2A, right? At $200. Who's going to miss $200?
That's what people would think. That is a myth. You're right.
It's a complete myth, right? Because if everybody who is in this business, whether as a hobbyist or as a professional or semi-professional, did that with just that one plugin, then Waves would no longer exist and all of their employees would be made redundant.
That's true.
That's how it works. And like you said, going back to Napster and the damage that did, the damage that has done is phenomenal. I mean, I'm a recording artist. I make my own records. I sell them online, and I don't make very, very much money at all from that. And nowadays a recording artist has to sell a massive volume in order to make maybe just about break even on a record.
Right.
And it's so hard to sell the kind of volume you need to break even.
Yeah, it's difficult, and yeah, it really is, and I think you're right. There's a myth that big companies like Waves, because like you said, they're multi-million, but unless you run a business, you don't understand. There's a massive amount of overhead to have that business run. If you think the engineers that come up and design and code and model these plugins, that create these plugins, work for peanuts, you're wrong. These guys are not just computer geeks or, audio geeks like us. These guys are engineers. These guys probably make very good money, and they should. There's a talent and a skill there that is unbelievable. I mean, and so these guys are not working. These are not minimum wage workers. These are professional people that have gone to school to learn the craft of coding and modeling and electronics and all the things you need to do to be able to do that. That, they have to justify, that overhead somehow by charging for the plugins. And so most people I don't think realize that. You're right. And I've had the same debate with people over my own products. That well, you sell them for $15, but if you sell so many, you must be rolling them. So, but you don't know what it costs to make these videos, and the time that it takes, and the marketing that it takes, and the all the hosting fees and everything goes along with it. That we're not making very much. So again, we could get on our soapbox for hours here, but at the end of the day, I urge, and I would be willing to bet if I were to go back, and I see people are really chiming in here, and I'll bet you if we were to go back, most people would agree. Don't steal the software, don't steal the plugins. If you can't afford them, use your stock plugins. I can't. I mean, how many videos, Johnny, we've done, and we continue to say you can make really great sounding mixes with stock plugins. If you don't believe me, go look at 50% of all my quick mix series over the last 3 years are all done with stock plugins. For every one video that I do with third-party plugins, I do 2 others with stock plugins.
Yeah.
Just to prove a point. Or I'll use something like maybe one Slate plugin and the rest stock plugins. Okay, you spend $50, you could get yourself a tape machine, but everything else is stock plugins. You
did.
Yeah,
you do what I did, and I originally went on a 1-year fast from third-party plugins,
right.
And that 1-year fast turned into 15.
Right.
So I've only just broken that fast at the start of this year.
You have, and I think I'm a bad influence on you, but right. But you're right. I mean, if you can't afford it, don't steal it. Use your stock plugins. There's nothing wrong with it. If you can't afford it, don't steal it. Go pay for it, because there's people out there that have families that they need to support, and they don't. You shouldn't be stealing product from people. You can justify it any way you want. You can say it's sharing and it's this and it's that. Like I told the gentleman online, it's not legal. It's illegal in every country in the world, no matter where you're from. And this person was from the United States, but it doesn't matter. I don't think it's legal anywhere, unless the manufacturer gives permission to share and I don't know if you can even do this. Like, I was thinking about this later. This is a license number, so the license is only unique. You couldn't share a license number. I don't know how they can activate it anyway.
No, it's unique unless somebody has found a way to generate license numbers automatically.
Maybe.
Believe it or not, there is software out there that can actually do that. But
yeah,
really, seriously, as much as it's a crime, which it is, there's also the moral issue there.
Yeah, I agree. And like I told someone, I said, if you're not a content creator, so I suggest write yourself an ebook. Create a product yourself, no matter what it is. Make it a digital product. Make it easy. Put it up online for sale. Generate some income from it. And then find out that someone's taking it and sharing it without your permission and giving it away for free, and see how it sits with you. Because until you're in that boat, until you're someone who has had something taken from you, it doesn't really hit home. And I could understand how if I bought an MP3 off of iTunes and I wanted to give it to my buddy Johnny, and I gave it to him, I can understand that if you're not a content creator, you think that's harmless, but it really isn't. If you're the musician that created that song, and I bought it from the musician and gave it to Johnny, well, they could have got another $1 or whatever I bought that music for, and I'm taking that opportunity away from that musician. And plugins are no different. And so if you're not sure how you would, if you think that we're overreacting to this, we're just being sensitive, I challenge you to create a product and then give it away. Put all your hard work into something that you created and then give it away for free. Or better yet, sell it and then find out that someone without your permission is taking it. If you want to give it away for free, it's perfectly legal. Nothing wrong with that. But if you don't want it to be given away, and you find out someone's online downloading it on these file sharing sites, see how that sits with you. And see if your tune changes, because I guarantee you that it will. And I'm much more sensitive to this topic. I wasn't as sensitive to this during the Napster days when I wasn't a content creator. I understood it was wrong. I never did it. I always bought my stuff. I never used a cracked piece of software ever, because I was always afraid of the viruses that were going to be on your computers, to be completely honest. But I didn't really think about it one way or the other until I started creating training products a few years back. And then once I found that someone was stealing my stuff, I was like, whoa, man. And it really burned my butt. I see how many hours it took me to make that stuff. You know how many months it took me to prepare that stuff? So anyway, that's my plugin thing. We have 51 people. I think that might be a record for a live stream. For one of my live streams, I think. I don't know about, You know, I think for one of my live streams. So anyway, that is that on the plugins and all that stuff.
Channel, baby.
Yeah. So
Into that channel, Dave.
what's that?
Should we get into the fat channel?
Yes, let's get into the fat channel. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pull up, I guess it would be called Studio One now, wouldn't it? So first, let me change the camera. I'm going to go over to camera, put up Studio One first, say goodbye to Johnny for a second, and then I'm going to switch the camera over to camera 3, I think. Okay, so you should see in a second Studio One, and then you will see, oh, Johnny's actually right there. Oh, I could put you down here, and no one will see you but me, Johnny. That's pretty cool. Okay, cool. So Johnny's going to watch the chat. Okay, so what we're going to do, this session here is a session, just a multi-track session. There's no processing done, as you'll see. There's no plugins. The only plugins I have are on this track that I created in purple called plugins, just so I can pull up all the plugins that we're going to be using, so I don't have to keep going back and forth to the browser just to make it a little more efficient. But there's nothing, no audio on this track called plugins. This song has 13 tracks in it, and I'll give you a little taste of what it is. All I did was just threw them in here. I balanced the faders a little bit, and this is the kind of the song we're going to kind of deal with, and then we'll jump into the plugins. So have a listen. And let me know if it's clipping, how the audio is, and all that stuff. It should be fine, but just let us know. Okay, so that's kind of what we're dealing with. How's the audio for there? I don't know if it's too loud. It shouldn't be, but how does it sound over to you, Johnny, over there out in YouTube land?
It sounds actually really, really good. And get this.
What's
it's
that?
In stereo.
It's in stereo.
Yeah.
I was
getting crash cymbals in opposite ears. So.
Really? Hey, guys out in the chat room, was that sounded like it was in stereo to you? Because I know we've had this debate with Wirecast. It's really not in stereo. It's in mono, but we were also talking off air prior to that we might have a fix for this, and I don't know if I inadvertently fixed it. Who cares? It works. Make sure you set your resolution to 1080p if you can, guys in the chat, so you get the best resolution. If you do 720, things may look a little pixelated, especially if you blow it up on a big 60-inch TV screen or anything bigger than like a 27-inch monitor. Okay, so that's kind of the song. So it's just kind of, rock, kind of a pop rock kind of a thing. So what I thought we would do.
Sorry, Dave. Yep. Some people are saying stereo, some people are saying mono. So I think this has to be a bandwidth issue. That's what I think.
Maybe it is.
Getting it mono and some people getting it stereo.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know why that, we're going to try to figure that out. I mean, that's great that we know it's stereo for some people. So that means that there may be something we can do. We thought it was Wirecast completely limited us, but maybe that's not really the case. Anyway. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. So I have no plugins on this, as you guys looked at. So we're going to just loop a section here, and let's start with something. Let's start with. Let's see. Let's start. What do you want to start with? Want to start with something? Let's start with something like an acoustic guitar, something that we can. Let's see. No. Okay, so we're going to start with the fat channel. So for you people that don't know, and I know most people watching this know this already, but you got to assume that down the road, Johnny, someone else may not be using Studio One, right? They may not they may be using some other DAW, okay? So here is the new fat channel by Presonus. Okay, and there's two different views. Someone asked me this question. If you click on this little button up here, it'll do a more collapsed view where you have your gate, compressor, your EQ, or your limiter. Or if you want to see the whole kit and caboodle all at once, you just click on this and it opens everything up for you, which is the way I tend to look at it. Okay? So over here we have in the compressor section, you can obviously drop down this arrow. You can use the standard old compressor, the stock compressor that we all, know and are familiar with. And then you have a tube compressor, which is their take of the LA2A. And then we also have a FET compressor, which is their take of the 1176 blackface. Okay, and now next to it or underneath it, we have our EQ. And again, we can start with our standard EQ, which has a little bit of a different look than the old one, but it's, the standard old regular EQ. We have a passive EQ, again, which is their take on the Pultec tube-based EQ. And then we have the vintage EQ, which is a Neve style. I don't know which Neve it is because I don't think it's a 1073. I don't know which Neve this is, but it's a Neve EQ. That much I can tell you. Okay, so what I thought we would do, and then also what you can do is you can put the EQ before the compressor. In this case, it's after the compressor just by clicking this little double arrow here between, and that will switch. You can go EQ compressor or compressor EQ. I tend to go EQ compressor more times than not, but that's just me. So what I thought we would do is, let's start off with something we know we can audibly hear, which is EQ. And I thought we would, on this acoustic guitar, would start with the Pultec, okay? And we're just going to do some EQ here. We're going to do some settings, and then what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the Waves Pultec and the Universal Audio Pultec, put them at right around the same settings, and just listen back and forth, click them on and off, and see what we see, or hear what we hear. Okay, so if we were to just play back this acoustic guitar here, we have 57 people here, Johnny. Write that down. That's a record for us.
I just did, and that's awesome.
Which will probably never be beaten, so remember this for the archive. Okay. So if you don't know how the Pultec works, let me just explain this quick, because some of you may not know. Okay, so over in this section here, in the top left-hand corner, we have our power on and off switch, which is pretty self-explanatory. Over here next to that, we have this boost knob, and we have this attenuation knob or cut knob, and that is paired up with the low frequency selector, which is a stepped selector, 20 hertz, 30 hertz, 60 hertz, 100 hertz, and you can either boost or attenuate or both at the same time. And what's unique about the Pultec, even in the hardware, one of the special things about this EQ, other than the fact that it's tubes and it sounds really good, is that when you boost and cut a low frequency at the same time, although you can't visually see it, it does something to the curve of those boosts and cuts. It gives it a kind of a unique sound in the low end, which we'll play with, which is interesting, which is something that no other EQ does. Okay, over here in the center we have this thing called bandwidth, which is really the Q control. If you can, all the way to the left would be very narrow, all the way to the right would be very wide or broad. Okay, and then we have the high frequency step selector, 3K, 4K, 5K, 8K, 10, 12, 16K. This is true to the Pultec hardware. That high frequency selector, you can only boost. Okay, so you have a boost here for the high frequency. There is no cut. The attenuation or the cut for the high frequency here is for this here, for the 5, 10, or 20K. Okay, that's how this works. Okay? So on the high frequency, you only have a boost, not an attenuation. The attenuation is only for 5, 10, or 20K. That's how the Pultec works. So if we were to play back this acoustic guitar, so cutting a little bit at 100 hertz, about 2.5 dB. So we started with this. And we went to this. So a little boost at 10K, about 5 dB, and a cut at around 1.5 dB at 100 hertz. Kind of cleans up some of the mud and kind of brightens it up a little bit, okay? So I don't know how that sounds out there. Hopefully it sounds okay. Sounds okay here. Johnny, you let me know if it doesn't sound okay. So now from there, what I'd like to do, that is our we're going to keep the compressor off for now. We're not going to deal with compression. Let's just deal with EQ. So now let's pin this and let's go ahead. Well, let's close it for 1 second. Let's now pull up. Let me collapse this a little bit so we don't have to look at all that. Let's pull up the Universal Audio Pultec right here. So here is the Universal Audio version of that same plugin. Okay. And if we were to pin it and we were to pull up the fat channel, we can copy the settings if we want. I don't know why my mouse is getting all kind of funky today. Maybe the battery's going dead. All right, so if we were to go to 100 hertz here, and this is laid out exactly the same way as the other one. The difference between the Universal Audio and the passive EQ here by Presonus is that, from the literature that I've read, is that they don't model the input and output transformers on the Presonus one, only on the but the Universal Audio one they do. So here in the Presonus one, they're really just modeling the EQ section. The input transformer and the output transformer are not part of that model, from what I understood in the literature. I could be wrong, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. On the Universal Audio EQ P1A, they do model the input and output transformer, and that is turned on and off by this little selector switch here, which I always leave on. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and let's do the same kind of settings. Let's do right around 1.5 dB on the low cut of 100. Let's put up the bandwidth in the middle like I did on that. Let's go to 10K, and let's boost about 5.5 dB. Okay, so I'm gonna bypass the Presonus one, and I'm going to play back that section, and we'll start with the Universal Audio, and then I'll just turn one on and off. You know what I mean? So let's do that. So here's the Universal Audio Pultec with the same settings. Okay, that's with it off. That's with it on. That's the Presonus. Universal Audio. Presonus. Okay, so the first thing I hear, I don't know what you guys hear out there, but the Presonus is much brighter, thinner and brighter for the same settings.
Yeah.
So now, could we get them to sound exactly the same? Sure, we could. We can brighten up the Universal Audio. If we wanted to kind of match the tone and go back and forth, we can do that. But I think that the difference in sound would be very subtle, and I don't know how that's going to come across over YouTube. But just with these settings, it seems like that the UA is a little bit more. It's not as bright, and it's not as thin. So here's the Presonus one more time. That's Universal Audio. Now, if we wanted to take this Presonus and kind of make it not as bright, and darken it up a little. Universal Audio. Okay, so now they're not the brightness. I tweaked it enough to where the tone is very similar now. What I hear here in this particular example, Johnny, and you chime in and you tell me what you hear, but what I hear, even when I'm a little more balanced brightness wise, is the universal audio seems to have a little bit more fullness to it in that upper mid range. You know what I mean? It sounds a little bit more. It sounds a little bit more like the guitar. It sounds like what the guitar would sound like if you were standing in the room with it. Where the passive EQ here by Presonus is really good, but it still seems a little thin. It seems like it's missing something in that low mid frequency range. Johnny, what do you hear on your end? And guys, what do you hear out in the chat? What do you guys think? I'm
Yeah,
interested to hear.
I'm agreeing with you, Dave, and I think the general consensus is the same, that the Presonus one is brighter than the Universal Audio.
Quite a bit, and now, and I've turned it down quite a bit. Like if you look at the attenuation, I'm only taking out a half a dB, and it still sounds thin to me, or thinner, I should say, thinner, right?
Thinner, yeah. And Pro Mixing says one has attenuation selected at 10 and the other is at 20.
Right, but the excuse me, the attenuation's all the way down. I turned it all the way down, so it's not being affected, but I can do that anyway. I can match them. Good point. But I turned this all the way down, so this is not, you're not hearing anything audibly here. So, but we can listen to it again now that we made that adjustment. So again, here's universal audio. Presonus. I could even turn down the boost even more. Universal audio. What do you think, Johnny? What's your opinion? Then I'll give you mine.
Well, I think the Presonus model is not bad. I think it's actually pretty good, but I think the Universal Audio is definitely fuller sounding, and has a bit more depth to it.
That was the word I was going to use. Yes.
A bit more character to it. Where, you know, I think the Presonus one is very good, but it's a little bit flavorless.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree. Not bad. We're not saying it's bad. We're just saying that it's better than the stock Pro EQ. If you're looking for some flavor, there's flavor there. No doubt about it. I think you're right. The Universal Audio has a little bit more depth, a little bit more 3D to it, and it just sounds more like the guitar, where it sounds like something in the Presonus is missing. There's something there that's not there to my ear. I interested what you guys hear in the chat. Let's now compare this to let's bypass this universal. Let's pull up the Waves version of the same plugin, right? Okay, so let's do that now, and let's see. This is called the Puig Tech for Jack Joseph Puig. I love that name, Puig. Okay, very similar looking. You have a gain knob.
This one is modeled after his personal unit. Is that not correct?
That is correct. I think he has more than one unit, but this is one of his units. That is what yes, I believe you are correct. So let's start with the same settings. Let's just take a half a dB out. Oop, that's half a dB there. Let's put about halfway. Let's go to our 10K. And let's do about about 2.5 dB bump here. And the attenuation's down at 0. We're on 20. This has a kind of a lot of the Waves plugins have this kind of this 60 cycle hum, 50 cycle hum kind of analog kind of a thing. It's just another kind of harmonic distortion thing. I'm going to leave it off because the Presonus doesn't have that, and we could play
Yeah.
with that. It's so subtle. I'll be honest. They do this, I think, on the LA3 A2, and I can't hear the difference. So either my ears are shot after all these years, or it's just some little. It's nice. It's nice to have another knob. You know what I mean? So we bypassed the Presonus. So now let's listen to the Puig Tech. Now again, the Puig Tech also has. They have modeled the input and output transformers like the UA. That might be the depth and some of the differences we're hearing too. If in fact I'm correct in saying that the Presonus one is just modeling the EQ section, that could be the difference. The model of the input and output transformers, a lot of people don't realize in analog gear, they think the tubes is where all the sound comes from. The tubes is part of the sound, but the transformers is a bigger part of the sound. Same thing with guitar amps too, by the way, in a lot of respect.
Martin Weeks says, "Don't forget your boost on the low end. You didn't adjust it." He says.
On the boost on the low end. No, I don't have any boost on the low end. I have it at 0 dB. I have it attenuating, a cut of a half a dB, and I have no boost on the Puig Tech, and I have about a half a dB cut. So I think I'm pretty much copied. I think.
I'm the same.
What's that?
I'm seeing the same.
Okay, cool. Okay. But no, yeah, guys, keep an eye on that because in doing these comparisons, if I screw a setting up, it's not really apples to apples. So good eye. Keep your eye on that for us. So let's hear what the Puig Tech sounds like. Oh, you know what? Duh. Stupid me. If I don't bring it to the right channel, it's not going to matter now, is it? You know, you didn't catch that. The 65 people in the chat room, nobody caught that.
I think they were saying that in the chat.
Okay,
Daniel
good eye. See, I did that on purpose. I was tricking you guys. That's all that was. See? Hey, no one said this was going to be easy, and I didn't say I was going to do this perfectly, by the way. Okay, so now we have it on the right channel, so that's a good step now. So let's listen. Let's see if we can now listen to the Puig Tech. Yeah, there's the needle moving. How about that?
But at least we know it works.
Okay, let's go back to the Presonus. Okay, go back to the Puig Tech. Presonus.
Someone says here, can you occasionally play the guitar with no EQ?
Yes. Here's the Presonus. I'll shut it off in a second and I'll pause it between the two. Okay, this is no EQ. Waves. Okay, Johnny, what do you think? What's your opinion on this comparison between these two?
Tell you what, I think it's a bit closer.
It is a bit closer. I feel that there's still a depth thing that's happening with the waves that's not there with the Presonus EQ.
I agree, but I think the Puig Tech and the Presonus are definitely closer.
Lot closer.
A lot closer.
A lot closer. What does everyone think in the chat? That they sound very similar.
Yep.
Again, the differences are a lot more subtle here. Again, let's just try it one more time. Let's just start with the Puig Tech. Presonus. They're much similar than the UA is. And again, in the context of a mix, it's going to change, right? We're doing this just to hear the differences between the two. In the context of a mix, one of these plugins may work better than another for whatever reason, but we're just trying to compare these in isolation, right? So to
Yeah.
me, it still sounds like the Waves has a little more depth. It sounds a little more full to me than the Presonus. So now I think we ought to do quickly. Let's compare the UA to the Puig Tech.
Good call.
Just to see how much of a difference is there. So let's start with the UA, and then we'll go to the. Did I bypass the fat channel? I think I did. Let me just double check it. No, I did not. See, guys, you gotta watch me because
Oh, I've got to read you this hilarious comment before we go any further.
Okay, go ahead.
Doug Lyons says, "God bless us that we can go through Scotland to get into Dave's ear." Talking about my monitoring of the chat.
Yes, yeah. It's a setup and a half to try to get all this stuff to work. It really is. Okay, so here's the UA, and then we'll go back and forth to the Puig Tech a couple of times. Here's the universal audio. Waves. Universal audio. Okay, what do you guys think? What's your opinion on that one, Johnny?
Joe Kurtz here says the UAD is set differently to the Waves.
It is.
I'm
on the boost on the top. Did we do that on the boost on the top? We might have. I might have moved this. You might be right. You're right. You're right. You know why? Because we were trying to get the Presonus one in the Waves, the brightness. You're right. So it's just the top end. So the top end on the Waves should be around 5 dB. That's right. Good eye. That's because because we were good call. Whoever called that, because we were trying to get the Presonus and the universal audio tonally to sound the same to see if we can hear a difference, because one was so much brighter than the other, even at the same settings. So now here we're at the same settings on the universal audio and the Waves, right? I think we are. Let's just double check everything. No, we got to turn up this attenuation a little bit. Good thing we got people in the chat that are paying attention. Excellent. Okay.
They say the Waves didn't move, so I don't know. Maybe you were not unbypassing it. I don't know. Bobby Harris says it wasn't moving. So.
Okay. Well, here's the universal audio. Then we'll go to the Waves. We're not moving. He's right. Why aren't we moving on this one? We should be, unless we have, let's see, we have something wrong here on the Waves. Let's just take a look. Make sure I can turn that on like this. Make sure we got the right one. Let's just double check that. I could have clicked on and clicked off something by accident. Would not surprise me. Okay, let's make sure our settings are all right, are all the same. Attenuation, let's turn that up a little. So we're pretty darn close, We're on 10K, no attenuation, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here is the Puig Tech.
Okay, now she's moving.
Universal Audio. Puig Tech. Universal Audio. Okay, what do you guys think? What do you think, Johnny?
I think maybe comparing these two, I think maybe the Waves one is possibly marginally thinner sounding.
Yeah, I think I think the Universal Audio to me still has a more open feel to it, but doesn't get thin. It just seems like there's more, it feels more open in that mid-range section where it doesn't get muddy, where the Puig Tech by Waves seems like it's got some cloudiness in there somewhere. It's something just seems a little off to me, to my ears. I don't know what the chat thinks. You know, and again, we can adjust the knobs on, you know, we're doing the same exact settings. If we wanted to try to tweak them so tonally they sound exactly the same, then it kind of, I guess it kind of doesn't really, then it's going to be so close it's not really going to matter. But I think these two are a lot more similar in character than the Presonus one. At least that's what I hear. We can also now, if you want, we can let's bypass this. Let's try taking a look at, let's look at a compressor now on the same guitar, and then we'll move over to a different track, maybe a vocal track, a bass guitar. We're not going to do every single track. We'll be here for 10 hours, but you know, we'll do a couple of different things. So let's now go back to the Fat channel, and we're going to shut off the EQ, and let's just take a look at the compressor. And let's do something simple. Let's do the LA2A, okay? Because that's an easy compressor to deal with. It's just simple. So again, for people who don't know what an LA2A and kind of how it works, pretty simple. You have a peak reduction here on the right-hand side. The more you crank up the peak reduction, the more gain reduction you're going to get. And then you have a makeup gain here. You know, it's kind of a musician's compressor. Peak reduction, makeup gain. I'm not familiar with what this key filter is. This is not on the original hardware, so I'm not really sure what this does. So for now, because the other compressors are not going to have that, we're going to leave that off. And you just turn this on by flipping up the toggle switch here. You can see the nice little lights come on. So let's
yep,
go ahead.
That filter thing is like an internal side chain, so you can not have the low end going through the compressor if you want. I think the very, very late models maybe had one, I think.
Oh, okay. I'm going to take off the EQs here first. No, I'll just keep them bypassed for now. Okay, so here's the LA2A by Universal Audio. Okay. Now, again, there were different models of the LA2A. There was, this is the LA2A, the gray face, which is the more medium style attack, because you don't have attack and release here. The silver face has a more fast attack, and the LA2, which is the original version, has a very slow attack. I don't know which one they tried to model here by Presonus. The more famous one that most people are familiar with are the gray face. That's the one you see the most. The silver face and the LA2, the original one, are a lot more rare. And the CLA2A, when we get to that, is the gray one. So let's try to compare apples to apples. So what we'll do is we'll start with the Presonus. I'll bypass the LA2A here by Universal Audio. Let's just get a little bit of compression happening here. Try to do about 3 dB or so of compression, or 5 dB. It's before. After. Okay, so we're getting about 3, 5, 7 dB on the heaviest strums, okay? So let's do the same thing. Let's try to set the same compression, about the same amount of compression on the Universal Audio, just to try to compare apples to apples. Try to level match this as best I can, guys. Okay, so right out of the gate, I can tell that and again, I don't know if this is because if the Presonus modeled, you have to turn up the peak reduction quite a bit more on the Presonus to get the thing to compress as much. Now, that could just be, again, if they modeled a specific piece of hardware, that would be very common. All these pieces of hardware are going to react a little differently from each other. So there's nothing wrong with that, just an observation. Or it could be that they modeled the more earlier version of the LA2, which had a very slow attack, and therefore you had to hit the peak reduction a little higher to get it to compress. Who knows? Just food for thought for whatever that means. Okay, so now, yeah. Go ahead, Johnny.
That's the question for the developers, I think.
Yeah, and again, they may have the answers to that. I really don't know. I mean, we're just doing this down and dirty, turning them on and go, what do they sound like, right? So yeah. I think we got about the same amount of compression, and I think I've level matched the plugin pretty darn close. So now let's do what we did with the EQ. Let's go back and forth. Now, again, for everyone out there in YouTube land, if you're listening to this on your iPhone or on an iPad, you're probably not going to hear any difference, not only between these two units, but probably not even going to hear the difference between the compression on and off. Probably. If you're listening to this on a good set of cans or studio monitors, it's going to be a little more obvious. This is going to be a lot more subtle, I can tell you that, than the EQ was. But let's give it a try. What do we got to lose, right? I'm probably going to have the best vantage point from sound than you guys will over the internet. And I'll try to, just be as honest with you as I can be on what I'm hearing. Okay, so here is the Universal Audio LA2A. Presonus. Universal Audio. Presonus. What's your opinion, Johnny? How's that sound out in the chat, guys?
My personal opinion is I think
There's no wrong
the
answer.
I think the UA compresses more smoothly, and I think the Presonus hits a little harder.
Yeah, hits a
Um,
little harder. Yep. What else do
yeah.
you think?
Mike Neighbor says it sounds to me like the Presonus has a faster attack. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that
It
too.
it might,
Attack.
and again, it depends on. You remember there were several versions of the LA2A, and
Uh,
so there could be that this one has a little bit faster attack.
mhm.
Could be I can play with the peak reduction a little bit, just trying to smooth it out. Yep. What else do you think, Johnny? Anything else you think about these two compared to each other?
I mean, I think the Presonus one is very, very good, but
Very good.
it is. It's very, very good. I think it's maybe a tad more aggressive than the Universal Audio one.
Yeah, what I hear here, I agree. I agree with what you said, and I think what you said, Mike said out in the chat. It sounds like the Universal Audio LA2A to me sounds like it has more depth. It just sounds like there's an imaging thing that happens with the Universal Audio that doesn't happen with the Presonus. Now, again, I don't know if it's because we're squashing it a little faster. Maybe the attack on the Presonus is a little heavier, and we can back off the peak reduction to get a little less compression, but therefore the attack's going to be a little slower.
Mm.
Again, it's impossible with compressors like this to get them dead on. They're not going to be. They're just not going to be. We're going to get them close. I feel like with the Universal Audio, when it compresses, I feel the guitar move forward, and I feel like I feel movement in the instrument, and it seems like it gets a little bit more smooth. Yeah, I think someone mentioned smooth. That's a good. I would. That's a good word for it. Where the Presonus, it seems like it pumps and breathes a little more, but it never pulled. The imaging doesn't seem to come forward.
Yes.
I don't know why. So let's try reducing the peak reduction on the Presonus to see if we can get that attack to kind of, maybe it's the attack on this is a little bit more sensitive. Let's try that. So right now we're on the Presonus one here. Let's not be so concerned with the needle and how much gain reduction. Let's focus on the sound and the way it's reacting, because again, I don't know the accuracy of the needles. Who knows? So let's. Universal Audio. Presonus. Okay, so what I hear, I don't know if you guys will hear this, so I'm just going to tell you what I'm hearing is that by reducing the peak reduction here, obviously we're not getting as much compression, but it's now the attack, it's letting those transients are coming through too much. And I feel like I have to compress more with the Presonus to get it to smooth out. Whereas on the Universal Audio, we're clearly now getting more compression, but it doesn't sound like it's being compressed. It sounds more even and smooth, and it has, again, there's an imaging thing that's going on with this Universal Audio that's not with the Presonus. In order to even out the performance with the Presonus, I got to give it a little more peak reduction, which then gives a little bit more breathing, pumping thing that we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound as smooth. And it just sounds, again, I keep using the word depth because I just feel like I can feel the instrument move with the Universal Audio in the mix, the depth perception of it. I don't know if you guys can hear that out in the chat. But with the Universal Audio, and we'll do it again, if you listen closely and you kind of close your eyes when you listen, when I turn on that plugin, the UA one, it seems like the guitar moves forward closer to you in the stereo field, the 3D sound field, where the Presonus doesn't do that. It kind of sits where it is, and it just either squashes it or doesn't squash it. I don't know if that makes any sense. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, but that's kind of how I hear it. But so let's listen to the UA. Right now there's no compression, okay? I'm going to bypass them both. And the first one I'm going to kick on is the UA. I'm going to let it play a bit before I kick it on so you guys can really get your ears used to what it sounds like without compression. And then when I kick it on, listen how it feels like it pulls forward. Okay, so this is with no compression. So did you hear when I turned it on how it just feels like everything kind of comes a little more close, and the top notes seem to open up a little bit more, and there's a little more clarity, especially when it's not strumming and it's more picking, like arpeggiated type of a thing. Let's do that same thing with the Presonus. Let's start with no compression at the beginning of the loop, and then I'll kick it on maybe 2/3 of the way through, and listen to the difference there. Now I got to give you a little more peak reduction, because if I don't, you're not going to feel any of the you're not, it wasn't really compressing those transients. It wasn't smoothing it out. So here's no compression, then I'll kick in the Presonus one. So there's taking the Presonus in about halfway through. I don't feel the movement like I do with the Universal Audio one. Again, we're talking subtleties here, but that's why we're comparing them, right? Because they're not that far off, but I mean there is a difference. There is a difference to me. And so someone in the chat said, could we try turning on this key filter thing? Would that resolve the issue? I don't even know what the hell this thing does. I could play with it. I mean, I don't know. By turning this, does that help us? We could play it. Let's see. Oh, is this like a filter? So like if I turn it to like,
Yeah, it's a filter.
Yeah, it says filter. I should probably know that. So is it like so whatever frequency I turn this to, it won't affect the compressor? Is that what that does?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like on the Slate stuff, they have the high pass filter. That's kind of what this does. Okay.
Same deal.
Okay. All right. Well, the Universal Audio doesn't really have that, but we could play with it. Yeah, see there. That UA to me just sounds better. It just does. I don't know. Again, it's something in the depth and the imaging of that. That's my opinion. Not that any of you care about that. But that when I listen to these two, that UA sounds better to me. It just does. It's not that this doesn't sound good. This does an okay job. But that sounds better. There's a depth thing that's going on with that UA one. Let's try the what you call it there, the CLA, right? The Waves one. Let's see what the CLA sounds like. Where is it? Where's CLA 2A? I gotta move it over here, right? Yes, I do. Okay, so this one again. Let's try to just get about the same amount of compression. Here's just the CLA for a second. Ooh, geez, that seems awfully loud. Let's turn down the gain. It's turned on, right? Oh, it's a lot. Just trying to level match it as close as I can get. Okay, we're getting about the same amount of compression, 5 dB, hit hard strum, 7 dB, 7 dB. I don't like the controls on this one as much. It seems like they're real sensitive. And I don't like the fact there's not an on and off switch like there is on this one on the UA. I hate that, but that's being picky, isn't it? Okay. So we're going to start with the CLA, the Wave CLA 2A, and then we'll go over to the Presonus one and see what we get. So here's the CLA 2A. That's the Presonus. It's the Waves. Okay, Johnny, what do you think about those two?
Wow. You know what? I think they're actually fairly close. Actually,
Yeah, they're pretty close. They're pretty close. A little bit closer than the Universal Audio was to it, I think.
there's less to choose between these two. I still think that the Presonus one is more aggressive.
It is, and you know, it's funny. As you saw, I was trying to play with that peak reduction, but what's weird about this peak reduction, it seems, I mean, I'm only using the tracker bolt, it's turning it a hair, and I go from a little bit too aggressive to it's not compressing enough. It doesn't seem like the taper on this is very accurate, or there's not enough of a taper. You know what I mean? That's what it kind of feels like to me. It feels like if I just dial it down a little bit, now I got those big transients coming through that I don't want. And if I just go 1 or 2 clicks up, it feels like it pumps and squeezes the hell out of it. So I'm not sure again why that is. Again, it's just the way this one seems to be reacting. But I can't get it to not. Like I said, either I'm going too much or not enough. On the Waves, I still feel like, although it's a lot less noticeable, I still feel like there is a depth thing that happens with the CLA 2A that doesn't happen with the Presonus. And I don't know if that's just because we're having this aggressiveness with the attack that that I can't seem to get rid of no matter what I do. Again, here's the Presonus. Yeah, even though the CLA 2A is compressing more, because again, the peak reduction, I can't get the same amount, it just sounds to me like, again, when it just seems like something in that low mid opens up on the CLA 2A that doesn't happen with the Presonus LA2. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's what you're hearing. I don't know what you guys are hearing out in the chat. I haven't been really watching the chat. I apologize.
Martin Weeks here says, by any chance dialing the reduction, would this be one of those press shift or alt or something to get more fine tuning of the dials? Like
I can try. Let me see. I think it's a shift key on a Mac.
Yeah.
No, not really, because I'm getting the same with or without. No, because you can see down here on the peak reduction, we're only going to 3, 4, 5. I mean, it won't go any finer than that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
At least I don't think so, but that's a good observation. I don't think it's going to go. I would assume this is dB. It doesn't look like it's going to go, less than a dB worth of increment here. And again, the same thing with the waves. I can turn this. You can see. Well, actually, on the waves, no, on the waves, you have a more fine adjustment. See the display?
Mhm.
It seems like you have a little bit more of a fine adjustment. But I don't. Again, I don't think that a half of a, you know what I mean, a half of a dB one way or the other is going to make that noticeable of a difference. Because
Mhm.
what I'm hearing here on this example, again, it's not a it's I agree with you, Johnny. It sounds like it's more aggressive, but to me, I'm trying to look past it. I'm listening for the way it opens up and the imaging of it, and it doesn't sound to me like the Presonus has that open sound like the Universal Audio, and the LA2A is a little more subtle. I think these two are closer. I would agree. I don't know what anyone else in the chat thinks, but that's kind of my thoughts on those. Um, and now if you want to take a look at, you want to move to this 1176, Johnny? That'll be our last comparison
Yep.
for
Yep.
this
Yep.
one. Let's bypass this. Let's just make sure we're bypassed all the way around here. And let's go over to the oh, we got to bring the fat channel back in because we got the 1176 right here. And then also keep in mind, guys, this is not a bash against the Presonus stuff. This is free with the damn software. The Universal Audio plugins are expensive. you know, there's a difference here between, the cost of this too, and not saying that, so, I would be surprised. I would have been very surprised if these sounded equally as good as the UA plugins. I would have been really surprised. I would have been very disappointed, and I would have went over and shook Presonus's hand. Great job. But these come with the software. This is a very good attempt at these. I think they sound good. Okay, we're comparing them to a plugin that's 4 times the cost. Keep that in
Yeah.
mind. Okay, so
Yeah.
you got to remember that. Even though I only paid $39 today for my CLA, but when they're not on sale, they're $200 plugins. Okay, so you gotta remember that. All right, so let's go over to the 1176, which is the FET. And let's start with this acoustic guitar. And let's just see if we can get some kind of we'll do a 4-to-1 ratio. We'll try to get, about the same amount of compression. Gotta really crank the input, huh? Wow,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
There we go. Let's just stick with the medium attack. Pretty close. Okay, so we're getting about the same amount of compression. Level match the plugin is pretty close. We're using a medium attack here and a pretty quick release. Now let's bring in the what are we, 1176? Okay, let's start off with the Universal Audio. Okay, now again, keep in mind, if you don't know, the blackface, a lot like the LA2A or the 1176, there were many versions of this over the years. Okay, I believe, and again, I'm not the developer at Presonus, but just by looking at this, I believe they tried to copy the blackface, the LN version, which is the more popular one of the 3 or 4 versions that are out there.
Yep.
They have a silver face with a blue stripe, which is tonally is very different from the blackface. And then they even have, what the hell is it called? The Anniversary Edition, which is a little different, which has a very slow attack, much slower than this. And so I think we're comparing apples to apples here with these two. This is the more famous of the ones. The more popular ones that you would see with an 1176 is the LN meaning low noise. That's what it is, okay? So let's do the same thing. Very quick release. A 4-to-1 ratio. We'll do a medium attack right up the middle. And let's just see. Let's bypass Presonus and let's see what we can get for compression. We'll try to get up in that 5 to 7 dB-ish. I might have. Did I do the same thing and not drag it over? See, and I thought this would be more efficient doing it this way. It turns out it's not. Okay, hold on. Oh boy. All right. Now, at least I caught it before everyone else in the chat did. Okay, so let's try
Yeah,
this now.
good spot.
There we go. So the first thing I notice again is on the Presonus compressors, you have to really crank the input a lot more to have anything really start happening. On the Universal Audio, it's not as sensitive. It's more sensitive. Just an observation. But we're using, again, medium attack, fast release. Okay, so I think we got them level matched pretty good, John. I don't know what it sounds like on your end, but I think we're pretty close. So we're close enough for rock and roll. So let's start with the UA, and we'll go back and forth, and let's see what we got. So here's the 1176 by Universal Audio. Presonus. Presonus. Okay, what do you think about that, Johnny? That was the Universal Audio at the end there.
I think the Presonus one keeps up pretty well, actually.
That one's a little bit better. Yep.
I think it's a closer match. I mean, yeah, you have to crank up the input quite a bit to get compression going, but I think the differences between the two are perhaps more subtle. Yeah, I'm still thinking that I mean, this is a different compressor from Presonus, but I still think that they're a little bit. I think they're a little bit more aggressive than Universal Audio ones.
They do seem to. The attack seems to, and again, it feels like that again. Even with that fine manipulation of the input, it goes from a little too aggressive to not aggressive enough. To me, and I don't know why, but that's how that feels. What I hear here again is I think it is a lot closer than the LA2A in Sonics, but
Yeah.
I feel like the Presonus, it seems like it's a little muddy, a little more mud than with Universal Audio. It seems like the mud goes away, and again it gets a little bit more clarity. So I don't know if the mud's going away or the top end's just opening up more. It's hard to tell.
I think the top end opens up more with the Universal Audio. It's like there's more bottom end with the Presonus one.
Yeah. And again, we have no EQ here. We shut all the EQs off. So again, once you EQ and then compress, or compress and EQ in the context of a mix, it's going to, we will be here all day. So this is just unprocessed track, compressor on the track. What are the differences? With some EQ in there, you can balance these things a little bit better. I don't know what people in the chat think about that, but let's put in the let's bypass this one and let's put in the CLA 1176. We didn't do that one right yet, right? So let's drag that over here. So okay, so now the 1176 here again, we have the blackface. Now this plugin, if you buy it on sale this weekend, you also get the blue stripe. Okay, but the blue stripe is a lot more bright to me than the blackface. But anyhow, it's two plugins in one. So let's try to do the same thing. Let's do a 4-to-1 ratio, quick release. Let's do a right up the middle attack. And let's see if we can get some compression happening with the CLA 76. Wow. Presonus. Waves. Presonus. What do you think of those, John?
Yeah, you know what? This is very close.
This one's very close. I agree.
It's paper between these two.
Yes. I still feel like there's a little more low end on the Presonus one.
Yeah.
But you're right. A lot closer, much like the LA2A, where the CLA 2A and the Presonus LA2A were much closer sonically. It seems like the Universal Audio one is the one tonally stands out a little bit more than these two. You know, even in this compressor. I don't know what the chat thinks about that. Let's see. And again, you know, the numbers are really, really similar. I mean, again, it's, you know, I don't know. Again, so in some ways, this is not the most fair comparison because like the attack knob is directly 12 o'clock here, but that doesn't mean that this compressor is going to react the same that if I put it at 12 o'clock on the other compressor. It's going to be a little different. So we can't look at this and go, it has, you know, the numbers have to be dead on because the compressors are going to react a little different. What we're trying to do is achieve about the same amount of compression, almost regardless where the dials are, right? And so, and also keep in mind again that if they're modeling two different pieces of hardware, if you took those two pieces of hardware and used them in your studio, those two pieces of hardware would sound different. They would not sound identical. So you would expect that there is some tonal differences here. Okay, so I know the CLA collection, this is one specific 1176 out of Chris Lord-Alge's studio, just like his LA2A. The Presonus one may not be a specific unit. It may be it may be the culmination of a couple of units, where maybe they modeled a couple and kind of, you know, put all the data in the soup there and cooked up one compressor. We don't know. So you're going to have a little difference. It'll be interesting now to compare this to, we bypass the Presonus. It'd be interesting to compare this to the Universal Audio one now and just see, right? Just to see, oh, I got to pin this one. Just to see what the difference is. How much of a difference is there? Or is there? So here's the CLA 76 on top. That will play first, and then we'll go to the Universal Audio. Okay, what do you think about those two?
Hmm.
I still hear a I hear a much more open sound with the Universal Audio ones.
Yeah, yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think if we're just looking purely at the tonals, I think the universal audio ones probably are out ahead.
I would think so, even in the EQs. I think
Yeah,
they just have it's just a more open sound, and they sound like they have more depth. Both the Pultec and the compressors. Again, they're fairly close, but there is a difference. Um, So that's our comparison there. I don't know if how's the chat hanging? Are they hanging? We still got 53 people. You guys are awesome. So I don't know. Do you want me to do the same comparison? Let's say on the lead vocal, and then we can go over to Johnny. Man, I don't know how many tracks you want to do this on. We've been doing this about an hour. I mean, I could keep going if everybody wants to, but maybe on a lead vocal, it might sound a little more obvious in spaces, you know, than an acoustic guitar. What do you think, John? Or do you want to try bass, or what do you want to try?
um, somebody actually earlier on suggested that we check the compressors out with the bass.
Yeah, we could do that. Certainly. We can do whatever the chat wants, we're going to do.
We
Let's
should do my.
let's do the bass. Or let's do the LA2A on the bass, because that's usually with bass, LA2As always sound great on bass. And then maybe we'll do the 1176 on the vocal, cuz that's the tendency where you would tend to put that compressor more times than not, even though there's no rules. So let's try that. So let's do the let's get out our fat channel. We got to drag it over, Dave, because if you don't drag it over, it's not going to work. Okay,
No,
so
no.
we got the fat channel here. Let's put on the LA2. Let's go back to this one, and then let's also do let's do the Universal Audio LA2. Okay, so we're going to put this one, and we're going to pin it.
I think people would be quite glad to hear something other than three chords on a guitar now.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I could get a little dry listening to this after a while, but you know, hey, this was the thing. We wanted to know how do they stack up. That's what we're here for, right? This is okay. So let's first start with the Presonus, and let's see if we can just dial in some compression here. Let me turn up the bass a little bit too, so you guys can hear it a little bit better. Okay, now let's set the Universal Audio. We're not clipping out there, Johnny, are we?
I don't think so. I am having to monitor very quiet.
Yeah, I think we are a little bit on mine. Let me just turn this down a little bit. I just don't want to clip out there in YouTube land. If you guys want to hear the bass a little bit more, just crank up your studio monitors out there in the world of YouTube. So here is the Universal Audio. Presonus. I can get a little more gain there. UA. Presonus.
Getting complaints of popping going on here.
Okay, I can turn down the bass a little bit more. You're just going to have to turn up your studio monitors more if you want to hear this. Here's the universal audio. Presonus. Okay, what do you think of those, John? Johnny boy?
Yeah, I think the UA has it.
Yeah, I think you hear a little more fullness on the note.
Yeah, you do. You get much more punch from the front end of the note.
Yeah. And again, we're doing about the same amount of compression. I mean, I know it's not dead on the money. And again, when you tweak this peak reduction on the Presonus one, again, you go from too much to not enough very quickly. There's not as much of a taper on the universal audio, and you could see. Look where the peak peak reduction is on the UA, and look where it is on the universal audio. I mean, again, it just seems like you get a little more accuracy with the universal audio one, I think. I don't know what the chat thinks about that. I can.
They're still talking about the pops, but Skipper's just made a good point.
What's that?
He thinks that the pops happen in the same places in the loop, therefore they must be in the track.
Yeah, they are. I think they are. They are in the track. Yep, they are.
This is with a plectrum, right?
Yes, it sounds like it's done with the pick and not with the fingers.
Yeah, it's a felt pick by the sound of it, and I think occasionally he's just like thunking down on the backbeat occasionally.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's probably not the most perfect bass track, but that's okay because you're gonna get sessions where they're not the most perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's see. Let's just listen to that one more time. So again, we'll start with the Presonus, then we'll move over to the universal audio. Here's the Presonus. Universal audio.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at the chat.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think on this one, I think the UA wins this particular one on this track.
Yep.
Let's compare it to the waves. Let's bypass universal audio. Let's look at the CLA 2A for this one, and let's just see what we get here. Oh, I gotta pin it. Silly me. We get the fat channel back up here. Okay, here we go. All right, so fat channel on top, CLA on the bottom. Let's see if I can dial in the CLA first. Let's shut off the Presonus. Okay, here's the CLA 2A. Presonus. CLA. They'll sound a lot closer to me.
I think so.
You could use either one of those on that track, and I think it would be okay.
Yeah.
I don't think the CLA outshines the Presonus on this one as much as the Universal Audio one does. So that's, interesting.
Shall we do the 1176 on a vocal
Yes,
and
that's
then,
what yep, that's what we'll do next, and then we can call it good, and then we can move on to the projects page stuff if you want.
yep,
Unless the chat wants to do something totally different. But if not, that's what we're going to do. So let's go to the lead vocal. Again, none of
yeah,
this hasn't been
same.
tuned, nothing like that. So just keep in mind, these are all raw tracks, right? So let me just get a verse up here first.
Is dark as
I'm taking
your
my cues from the chat,
lies.
Dave.
Okay.
It comes as no surprise. You're silent.
All right, so we got some vocals happening there. All right, so let's start off with our fat channel, if we can, and let's go with the 1176. Let's drop this down. Let's do 11. We'll turn off the EQ, and we're going to go 11. Yes, 1176. Again, let's we'll do a 4-to-1 ratio. We'll do a quick release, and we'll do kind of a fast attack here.
Like Louise Brooks, you play femme fatale. You love to be cruel. On your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel.
Okay, there's our Presonus, and let's put it up against the let's do the universal audio first. I'm gonna collapse this a little bit so we don't have to. Okay, let's mute this and let's go over to our UA 1176. Let's do the universal audio first. Did I drag it on here? There we go. All right. Oh, I didn't pin it. Always do that.
Martin.
All right, so let's do the same thing. Let's do a fast release. Let's do a pretty quick attack because there is some dynamics happening here. 4-to-1 ratio. Let's see what we get with the universal audio.
On your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel. On your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks.
Okay, so we got it level match pretty close, right? Okay, so let's start with the Presonus, and then we'll go over to the universal audio. We'll flip back and forth.
On your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel. On your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel. On your with an innocent look. On your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale.
Okay, what do you think of that, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm giving the win to UA for me.
Yeah. Well, why do you feel that way? What's the chat think too? I'm be curious to hear. I hear a pretty large difference here.
Yes, it's pretty clear.
It's a lot more open, the UA. Again, you hear it's almost like the blanket has been taken off the speaker and the vocal opens up. But again, there's something with it's more, to me, it's more of a feeling of a depth thing too, Johnny, more than anything else. It seems like that vocal comes and just, you could feel it come closer to you. Yeah. I don't get that with the Presonus one at all, on this vocal anyway. So let's do that again. So we'll start off with Presonus and go to the UA.
I mean, I think it compresses nicely. I think the Presonus version compresses nicely, but like you say, there's not a whole lot of motion.
Right. And remember when we talked about, we talked about this before. When we talk about the analog style plugins, I've said this a million times on a live stream. When I think, Johnny, we talked about this in the interactive mixing session a few weeks back, was
Yeah.
once you get beyond understanding compression and you can hear the compression, the value of these plugins is not just the compression piece. I always say it's the tonal aspect. These compressors have a certain tone to them. If we were to put the blue stripe on here, it would sound completely different than the blackface. So it all depends on the tool that you need for the job that's at hand, right? So this is why these compressors, I think, have a leg up on stock compressors, because you don't have the stock compressors, not this one by Presonus, but the regular, like the Pro, the regular Pro compressor. They're very transparent. You don't get that tone that you get from these. So when we're talking about depth and movement and all that stuff, that goes beyond just the fact that it crunches the dynamic range, right? So anyhow, here's the Presonus again, then I'll toggle over to the UA.
You love to be cruel with an innocent look on your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel with an innocent look on your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale.
Yeah, there's just an openness to that UA that's just not there with the other one.
Yeah,
Now
definitely.
let's quickly put the waves one, and then we can finish up on this unless anyone wants to see something specific. But let's we got Presonus, and then last but certainly not least, let's put up the CLA 76, and then we can see if this. Oh, I didn't pin it again. Oh, you think after you would think by now I would have. Okay, so we'll put Presonus on top because that's what we were doing before. Okay, so Presonus on top. And we have the CLA. Let's bypass the Presonus and let's set up the CLA. So again, 4-to-1 ratio. We're going to do a fast release. We're going to do medium fast attack, about the same. And let's see if we can get some compression happening with the CLA 76.
You love to be cruel with an innocent look on your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel.
Okay, so we're level match now. So let's start with Presonus, and then we'll go over to the CLA 76. So here's the Presonus.
On your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel with an innocent look on your eyes is dark as your lies. It comes as no surprise. You're silent like Louise Brooks. You play femme fatale. You love to be cruel with an innocent look.
Okay, what do you think of those, Johnny?
Again, I think the CLA and the Presonus are much closer.
Yep, I would agree. They are much closer. I do hear a little bit more difference in the depth than I did on the bass guitar. On the vocal, it's a little more obvious that the CLA has a little more depth. Not as much as the Universal Audio does, but more than the Presonus. But you're right, they are closer. But the differences are more obvious with a vocal, which I would have expected, I don't know what the chat thinks. So what did we learn? So I think what we learned was, again, not to take anything away from Presonus, I think this is a hell of an attempt to really model something, and and again, to put it in the software for free, that if you want a different flavor than your standard Pro EQ or Pro compressor, these do that. They do, and it is a nice addition. It's not just some hype thing they threw in there that really doesn't do anything. It does. It really does, and they're good. I think the Universal Audio out of all of them are probably, to me, the better sounding ones of the three. I would probably put CLA a little bit ahead of Presonus on a couple of, on maybe the vocal, but on the bass, I think they're even, the Presonus and the CLA. On the acoustic guitar, I still think they're close, but I think the CLA has a little bit more of an open feel to it. But keep in mind, you're paying for the CLAs, you're paying a lot more for the Universal Audio ones, and so horses for courses. So what does the chat think? Did you guys find this helpful on some level? Or did you think this was all just a big waste of time?
I think it did. There's been some hilarious comments talking about the vocalist on this particular song.
Yeah, we picked it for a reason, because there is some kind of there's some screechiness, and there's some plosives, and there's things going on in there that I thought from a compression point of view would be interesting to see how the compressor would react. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I think the Universal Audio stuff. I think the Presonus stuff is good. I don't think it's as good as the Universal Audio stuff. I don't.
I think Presonus has a way to go. I think this is a great first.
Fantastic. Yes.
A really, you certainly wouldn't expect that kind of quality for a first go at analog modeling. But I mean, I think the console shaper and the CTC1 were kind of baby steps in the direction that I think they're going to be heading in for the future. So I think we will see more from Presonus along this line, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say that the console shaper, there was that I wasn't crazy. I haven't had the new one yet, but the first one I didn't think was that good. And when I compared it to the Slate Digital stuff, to me it wasn't even in the same ballpark.
No, it wasn't.
But this second go around with some of their modeling is I think a quantum leap forward, and they're getting much better at it. And I think again, considering it's free with the software when you buy the Pro version, or I don't even know, it may even be free with the artist version. I don't know if the Fat Channel is or not. I'm not too familiar. It wouldn't surprise me if it was. I think it's good. I think it's good. I think they're good. They're good. They're not great. They're good. And I think it's excellent.
Yeah, and the fact that you're getting them for free, incorporated in the DAW is just something else. I mean, I don't think anything other than maybe Mixcraft has the same kind of idea.
Right.
But other than that,
yeah. I think I think it's great. So I hope you guys found that helpful. We still got 48 people here. This is awesome. And we did someone just asked about doing it on a guitar track. We just did almost 2 hours of this. And so we can do it again. We could do this in another, if you guys feel that maybe on another live stream or in a few days or next week, you want to see more of this comparison across more tracks, let us know in the chat. Johnny and I will take notice, and we'll do another live stream just to do that. But at this point, we want to try to move on because we've been doing this a little over 2 hours. And we can do more comparisons down the road, but at least you guys got a pretty good idea. Someone's asking about what does the UAD cost? Well, you first have to invest in the hardware. So that's the first thing you got to have. And then the plugins themselves, depending on which ones you buy, some of these plugins come with the hardware, and then some of them are upgrades. But if you had the hardware, like the Universal, the LA 1176s are about $150. The LA2s are about $150. And they go up from there. They're not cheap. They're expensive. But I mean, they're to me the best analog emulations on the market. To my ear. Again, that's not to say the other ones are bad. They're just these are a little more high end, but you're going to pay for them. They're not free. So you got to keep that in mind. You won't see them sell a plugin for $39 like Waves does this time of year. No way. They put them on sale. You could get the 1176 for $99 maybe right around Thanksgiving time, but they're normally $199, $249. That's what they are. So
Yeah.
they're up there. So now, Johnny, we're side by side. If you want to share your screen, and then when you do that, I should be able to just go full screen mode, and I should be able to put on camera. Go ahead, you share your screen, and then if I jump to camera 5.
Okay, 1 second.
Oh, I got the dial pad up there, and then if I go full screen mode, we tried this before. Yeah, what I'm looking at now, what the YouTube guys will be looking at in a second, is your desktop with you and me down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And Johnny now is going to, I'll monitor the chat, Johnny. Johnny's going to go ahead and he's going to talk about, I don't know, the project page and some other stuff. So take it away, John.
Yeah, so the project page. Lots of fantastic. Hang on, I'm going to have to mute the YouTube feed, otherwise it's going to get chaotic in my headphones. I'll lose all sense of reality and awareness and start thinking I'm Christaberg or something, which would be very bad. So the project page, let's go over there. So this is my song Chanel from my EP, Belonging to Tomorrow, which came out last year. I'm not going to plug it because that would be rude. So there have been a whole bunch of major changes to the project page. To start with, all of this area here is completely different to 3.3.4. This meter here is a little bit shorter in length than it was, but they've basically just scaled it down rather than changing all the kind of like it's just scaled down. And so you have this nice loudness meter right here that gives you the option to either be loudness units full scale or just loudness unit without reference. So, and this is very, very helpful when you're mastering so that you ensure that your project is meeting loudness management standards, particularly if you're going to be exporting your music to SoundCloud, to Spotify, to iTunes, to YouTube, or even to a public radio broadcaster. You're going to need to make sure that your master meets those requirements. Otherwise, you will find that broadcast compressors and limiters are going to turn down your music, and your dynamic range will suffer as a result. So all of these changes are extremely useful, helpful, and important. So I am going to try and cover as much of the new changes as possible, because I don't think the Presonus Live launch video did that particularly as well as I hoped they would, because I knew, having been on the beta team, that a lot of major changes were coming. So let me just refer to my notes here, because I want to be like a newscaster. So let's start with the track IDs, which are over here. So with Studio One 3.5, track IDs are now completely independent from songs, from the audio file down here. Where the track IDs used to be tied directly to the audio file boundaries, they can now be inserted and positioned freely in the project page, which is very, very cool. So, for example, let's say you are wanting to put together an album of a live concert, but you want to be able to have the CD separate out all the individual songs from that performance. You can do that much more easily now than you could before. By being able to put markers in. I'm not going to do this with this because it would completely mess it up totally. But you can actually separate out an audio performance into as many different constituent parts as you need or want, and it will not. Because what used to happen is you used to get like a jitter if you tried to make a CD of a live performance mastered in Studio One. You would get a jitter between each song. So you wouldn't get that nice continuous flow of a concert. You'd get a break. Now, you're not going to get that. You will get a nice, smooth, seamless performance, and you can do really, really seamless crossfades between songs if you want to. which is, I think, is extremely cool that you can do that now. So track markers are independent on the project timeline and come with many useful drag and drop keyboard shortcuts. So there's a whole bunch of shortcuts, which actually I haven't explored yet. So I'll let you guys explore those at your leisure. Next big thing is the loudness detection, actually. Up here, you've got this little thing here. And if you click it, as you can see, it's now detecting the loudness of my song, and it does it offline. And now you have this information that pops up. So you have pre-effects and post-effects.
Well, that's very helpful.
So pre-effects would be pre-effects would be pre-insert. Post-effects would be post the master post here. So it's really handy to be able to look at your integrated and your loudness range data as well. So what you have here, EBU R128. If you don't know what that is the European Broadcasting Union loudness management standard, which was adopted in 2013 by European broadcasters. In the United States, that is referred to as A85, which has a similar loudness target. In the European Broadcasting Union, it's minus 23 LUFS. But in the United States, it is minus 24. Japan has OP59, which is also minus 24. And Australia, I forget what it's called in Australia, but again, it's minus 24. For some reason in the European Union and in the UK, it's minus 23 LUFS. If you're not sure what LUFS means, that basically is loudness unit full scale. Now, one loudness unit is equivalent to more or less 1 dB. So full scale would be it's to do with it's either absolute or it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm starting to lose my mind. But yeah, full scale is all to do with absolute or relative. So if it's full scale, it's relative to the whole scale. If it's absolute, then it bears no relation to the scale. And if you understand that, great. If you don't, send me an email and I'll try and explain it at 9 o'clock in the morning. All right. So EBUR 128 is the recommended for broadcast and streaming media providers automatic loudness control. So if you want to make sure that your master is gonna hit those targets and not get turned down by the broadcaster's compressor or the streaming media's compressor, then you want to make sure that you hit that target because it has a plus minus 1 LU margin. So that's what you want to do. So what you get here is you get true peak levels left and right. You get your RMS level, and then you get a DC here as well. So this little monitor here is kind of tied to this, but this one measures your LUFS in real time as the track is playing. So if I just set this up back at the beginning, and you can see what goes on. All right, so you could see here that it was measuring the integrated loudness, the loudness range, and the true peak. And it measured it at 1.06 true peak. And you can reset that. So every time you play that, I can set that to 0 and I can play it again. Don't have no plan. I can't wait for when you're home. And it's made new measurements there in loudness units full scale, and in just regular loudness unit you get different values. but it's very, very cool. You can change this meter at the bottom here to any of the K system meters. You can have K20, K14, K12. You can set it to EBU R128 as well, which looks like this. There'll be wine and sweet recline. Okay, and that shows you where your target is right there, your loudness range target, which is very, very cool.
So now, Johnny, what do you recommend people? I'm sure someone's going to ask about where do you want your final master to be from a loudness standpoint. I know it depends on the scale. Like what would you be looking at? What's a healthy master that's not, too loud but is loud enough to compete with stuff in the public, release?
My personal opinion would be that you would want your peak value to be somewhere around about -1 to 0.5.
Okay.
dB full scale. So that would be my personal opinion, because if you get any closer to 0 than that, then you can get into a place where you still find that you have distortions in your master, because what you can get is you can get into sample peaking, which basically means that in between samples the audio has actually gone over 0 and clipped, but it doesn't show. It doesn't show up in your metering that it's clipped.
Right.
So this is why what I use K14 for mastering, which is basically, if you don't know what any of the K system metering is, it was kind of invented by a mastering engineer called Bob Katz, and it's basically a fantastic way to manage your headroom for mastering. So and for mixing as well. So I would use K20 for mixing, and then I use K14 for mastering, and you can see here where 0 changes every time. So 0 is a little bit lower on K20
right.
than it on K14, and also the top of the scale changes as well. So I've got 14 there now for K14, K20 at the top, and basically what it does is it moves where 0 dB is in reality.
Mm-hmm.
So basically this gives you now 20 dB of headroom. K14 gives you 14. K12 gives you the least, which is 12. And the least of all would be EBU R128, which only gives you up to 9. But it does measure your short-term loudness and your momentary loudness as well,
right?
Which is very, very handy.
Yes.
Because you want to keep aware of these numbers here as well. So you are getting the best dynamic range for your master that you possibly can, because you don't want to be squashing, you don't want to be driving your limiter so hard that you lose all your dynamic range.
Right. One of the questions in the chat is, Johnny, where do you set your brick wall limiter to then, based on the scale that you choose? Again, are you setting the limiter so when the audio's playing back, it's around that -1? What you were kind of saying is that how do you set that? How would you set that for this track? That might be a good thing to show.
Okay, so I've set mine to -1 here. Ceiling a threshold to -1, release right up the middle, about 100. You can change that. I just leave it at 100. And then what I would do is I'd play the track. If, let's say, I was in this final part of mastering this track where I was wanting to drive up the volume, now that I've done my EQ, my compression, then, and maybe even multiband compression if need be, then the last thing I would do would be to drive up the limiter and get some perceived loudness going. So if I play this track and then dial up the input. See the sailors spend their pay. How cries, but I could never walk away. My love. So, sorry, I had the limiter right over the top of this meter here, which is a bit annoying. So I'll play the track again. And basically what I'm trying to do, when I'm mixing, I'm basically wanting to get my mix bus to basically be yellow and very rarely pop into the red. Kind of like maybe a snare drum will peak over into the red, or kick drum maybe peak over into the red. But generally speaking, I'm aiming for yellow. But when I'm mastering, it's a little bit different. I'm wanting to get a little bit more red, but not like completely solid red. So let's play that. Sorry, you were going to say, David?
No, go ahead. Nope, you got it.
All right, so I will play a little bit more of this, and we can watch what happens with this meter here. Comes from above. My Chanel, do you not know? No matter where you go. So as it happens, I don't want to really drive too much input into this before I'm hitting my personal ceiling of -1 dB.
Right, because now I could see on the gain reduction meter at one point it was the brick walls compressing down about 3.5 dB.
Yeah, exactly. So that's too much.
Right.
That's too much. So I started backing it up when it did that, and so it's basically somewhere between 0.5 dB and 1.5 dB is pretty good on the limiter for gain reduction. Anything after that, and you start crushing it. To my opinion. I mean, different styles of music, you will want to hit the limiter a little bit harder. You know, heavier styles of music, you might want to do that. Because for certain heavier styles of music, you know, dynamic range is it's not unimportant, but it may be less important.
Right.
But you don't. The thing that you want to do is, regardless of the style of music, you don't want to fatigue your listeners' ears, and lots of heavy compression can do that. So, you know, that's what you want to avoid. You want to kind of preserve the dynamic range of your music, because music should have dynamic range. You know, just like when I'm speaking to you now, it's not just my phrasing I'm adjusting with pauses, but I'm also changing my dynamic range. Like some words I'm emphasizing more than others, and other words I'm backing off, like that. So, you know, we kind of do that in our speech patterns, and that keeps the listener engaged to what I'm talking about. So for the same reason, you want to preserve that in your music when you're mastering. Mastering isn't about making it loud. Mastering is about making your music have life to it and character to it, and dynamic range. And yes, you are making it louder, but you're making the perception of volume louder rather than the actual volume louder. And that's why mastering is a bit of a dark art.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of misconception about what mastering is. And I think you just cleared it up quite nicely. And also I would add to that mastering, you know, we're mastering one song and you're thinking about this one way, but if you had a whole album or a whole EP, say 5 tracks, now the mastering is really getting the cohesiveness between those 5 tracks. So they sound like they all belong on the same record, which is a little bit more in depth than what you're even talking about here with a single track, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I mastered my EP, because I did everything in-house myself, because I don't have a budget for sending out to another mix engineer or another mastering engineer. So I did it myself. And so that was my goal, really, because I wrote 5 fairly different songs to each other, similar style, similar genre, but they were very different within that. So the one thing I wanted to do was make sure that, first of all, they were level matched, so that, you know, my listener isn't going to have to keep turning up and turning down between songs, but, you know, also wanting to make sure that there is a sonic integrity across the whole EP.
Right.
And also so that there's, you know, each song has its own characteristics brought out, its own personality brought out, and yet the whole EP has a personality of its own.
That's a good point. Here's a question which hasn't been asked in the chat yet, but I know someone's going to ask it, so I'll ask it. So because we're talking about one song, why do you need to master in the project page? Couldn't you just do exactly what you're doing in the song page, in the mixing stage? In other words, you have a limiter. You could put that limiter on the master out, couldn't you?
Yes, you could.
So what's the advantage to just bringing this one track into the project page as opposed to just doing it at mixing?
Simple answer is all of this.
All the tools, right?
Yeah, you get a lot more tools in the project page than you do in the song page. In the song page, if I just flip back to it, you don't. Yes, you can switch this to. I've got this set up for K20, and it doesn't have the EBU metering. It just has K20, K14, K12, and peak RMS.
Right.
So, from that standpoint, you've got less less data to be able to get your hands on. You don't have the loudness measurements. You don't have anything like that. You do have the spectrum analyzer. You are able to check your phase and all of that in the song page. So if you've got excuse me, if you've got Studio One Artist, you can absolutely master your song in Studio One Artist. You can use EQ, you can use compression, you can use limiting to do that, and you can do that, ears only. Absolutely, you can. In fact, you can do that here. This is cool. Watch this. We'll walk hand in hand to our promised land. I can turn off all the metering.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good.
So if I don't want to be distracted, I can do that.
And then you also have in the project page, Johnny, all the metadata and everything that you could put in the tracks that you can't do, right? So you have a little bit more you can do there for, when you're sending stuff out to mastering houses and such. And you can also do a DDP file, which you can't do out of export mixdown, can you? I don't think you can.
DDP files you can't do in the song page.
And you can't burn to a CD like you can here. If anybody uses those little silver things called CDs, you can't do that in the song page.
Oh, you mean mug mats?
Yes, that's what I mean. Coasters, a little. You put your coffee on them and.
Yeah, once upon a time, they used to go in CD players. Yes, you can burn to a CD from the project page. You can make a DDP file. Now, here's something very cool about the project page. Not only could you always create a DDP image and send that to a mastering house, but you can also receive a DDP image now.
Oh, right.
That's one of the new features, which is very, very cool. You've also got some different stuff going on with this meter up here, which I've not really talked about. You've always had octave and third octave and FFT and the waterfall, but now we've got a whole bunch of these. Let me just play a little bit more of my song. If you guys are fed up with my song, I do apologize.
Someone's asking if that's you singing, Johnny, by the way.
It is me singing.
Yeah, it is. That's what I thought. I was going to say no, but I think it is you. And Sir Johnny Geib just stopped in as well. Johnny, thanks for stopping in.
Hey, Johnny. Yes, that is me singing, for better or for worse.
That's good. It's good. It's good stuff.
So, thank you. Appreciate that. So you've got all of these new things, like you've got 12th octave, which actually shows up this fantastic little piano keyboard. So what happens here, when I play the track, I wonder if I can actually turn the volume of this track down so you don't have to hear it all the time. Let's just turn it on nice and quietly, so I can actually talk over myself singing, which I've always wanted to be able to do, by the way. So with this 12th octave thing on, you've got all these peak, I'm going to call them rods for better term, and then you've got all these holds as well, which is very, very cool. So you can see what they've peaked up to, and then you can make adjustments if you want. But they're all related to these notes on the piano keyboard. So you can actually pick out not only a specific frequency, but a specific note that might be sticking out, like this F sharp here. And it tells you what the level of that note is as well as it's peaking, which is very, very cool. So if you wanted to dial out a specific frequency, it would tell you what that frequency is, that particular note, and then you can go and EQ that away. So that's extremely helpful.
Yeah, that is very cool.
I think you've always had waterfall, but now it's color coded up on this side. So it goes this kind of color. I'm colorblind, David. So help me out what color that is up the top there.
It looks purple.
At the very top there, where my mouse is.
Move your mouse. Oh no, that's like a looks like an off-white color,
An off-white
like a
color.
peach color almost. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with that. So it's kind of like black. It's pretty much inaudible, and then the colors go from dark to light. That's the way I'm going to put it.
Right.
Up to 0 dB. And now I've got this turned right down, so at the moment it's nice and purpley. But if I was to turn this up, it would go much more white. So that's pretty cool. You've also got sonogram, which is entertaining. So that's quite cool to look at. It's just a whole bunch of different ways of reading your data, but these are very cool as well because you can change the range of them. I mean, I have it set to minus 144 dB, but you can set it to minus 50, minus 72. You can set it to any of those, and you can also change how long the hold is after you've hit the stop button. So if I back up again and play the song. Where you go. And if I change this. So now these take much longer to fall back to 0, and these stay up top for a little bit longer. So I can make note of where these are and make any adjustments I need to make, which is very good.
Yeah, very cool.
And this spectrometer here has had a bit of a redesign, a bit of an overhaul. And is fantastically more accurate than it was before, showing your phase correlation and where kind of stuff is in relation to the stereo field. So, I mean, I mastered this, and I've realized now, playing this through this new setup in the project page, that actually I think my master is maybe a little bit on the narrow side. It's not quite as wide as I thought it was, which is very cool to note. There's another big change, and that is that you have access to the pool.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Which is great. That's just really, really handy. If you can make a complete pig's ear of what you're doing here and you don't like it, you can always just drag it back in again. It's, that's just really, really handy. And you have access to the cloud files, so you can drag in from Dropbox or anywhere else on your system and bring it into the project, which is very cool. So let me just check am I missing anything else off here? Am I overlooking anything? Spectrometer, new loudness metering, on-off button. I've shown that, I think, which is these buttons here, so you can master with your eyes closed effectively. Now, one cool thing about the metadata that you were talking about earlier, Dave, is that the IRC codes, in fact, all of your metadata can be added across all of the tracks now. So it's less of a pain in the butt having to add in metadata for every single song. And it's even better because the ISRC codes now get added incrementally. So you're not having to type in each number every time.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because that is a pain. That was a pain. You're right. That was kind of a pain in the butt. Yep.
So it does it incrementally now. So it takes care of it for you, which is very, very cool. And actually going back to edit your mixes is slightly different. Do you remember you used to have like the little red dot?
Yeah, the little wrench or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So that they've moved that to over this side now.
Okay.
And you can hide the metadata if you want to give yourself a bit more screen real estate. That's easy enough done. And then so now all the editing is done over here, which is very cool. So I think that pretty much wraps up.
So what's it's now, I mean, it was before, but even more so now, it is a fully featured mastering suite. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, it's not although I didn't think this was like this in the past, it's not just it was an afterthought. It's a mixing recording software, and the mastering was just kind of a, an afterthought throw on. This is a real mastering suite. I mean, this is really more tools in this thing than you could probably, ever think to use. Um, and they really did a lot of upgrades to this from the last version of it for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not quite Wavelab yet, but you know what?
I'll tell you what, though, it's pretty darn close, man. Because I used to use Wavelab, and I mean, this is more than you need, really. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, it's everything you need. Everything is there. I don't think there's much else that you would do for the average person. What else would you need? What do you? Let me ask you this: do you feel like there's anything that's missing that you'd like to see? A feature that you've used in other mastering things that this doesn't quite have yet, or does it? It seems to me like it has everything.
To me, I think it has everything. It has everything I would ever need. I mean, I'm no Ian Shepherd, for sure.
Well, yeah, who is, right? I'm not either.
I mean, I'm sure if Ian was to be watching this, he would point out a few things that are missing, or point out some areas where perhaps metering is not necessarily most accurate. But this is a massive leap forward from the previous version, from 3.3. And to be honest, this is the big thing for me, is that Studio One still remains the only DAW that has an integrated mastering.
That is absolutely correct. You're right about that.
8-9 years.
Yeah, which is astonishing. And the other thing I really like about this too, and Johnny Guy just made this point, and he's right. I was thinking the same thing, is that to go back and tweak your mix and have it automatic. I mean, that was in the last version too. That's not new. But to go back and be able to tweak the mix and have it automatically bring in and update everything. I mean, that's just so it's just so clever. I mean, why wouldn't every DAW have that? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I think it's as fully featured as you're going to get. Or like you said, the most 99.9% of the people out there, you don't need a mastering suite anymore involved in this. Most people wouldn't even scratch the surface of what this could do.
Yeah, for me, Studio One, even more now than ever before, is the complete music production package, all in one. Does everything from, I mean, their tagline, I think for version 2 used to be riff to release. Well, I think it's even more so now.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Yeah, that's great.
Are there any more questions there, Dave?
No, not really. Let's. Robert says he's buffering on his end, but I'm looking at the live broadcast and it looks okay to us. Let's see. I don't see any more questions. Just people, you're making some comments about the way you can update the song and go back and forth, which is true. We just talked about that. A lot of people were saying that, yeah, this can do much more than they even already currently understand about mastering. It's still a little confusing to a lot of people, but they're real happy with a lot of the additions that were made. Are there any more questions about the mastering page that Johnny can answer? And if not, we can, anything else you guys want to ask? Whether it's about mastering, whether it's about plugins, whether it's about recording, whatever. We're going on about, let's see, 2 hours and a half, and we still have 38 people here, Johnny. I think our high was 61 or 62, and then it held around 50 for almost the entire broadcast, and it's just starting to drop off a little bit, but we still got 39 people right here, which is great. So again, thanks so much for hanging out. I hope you guys found all of this helpful tonight. We covered a lot, and some people, while you were presenting, Johnny, were asking about could we do another live stream where we compare some of the Slate plugins to the Priest, do a little more comparison on different tracks, different instruments, maybe drag some Slate stuff in. And the answer is yes, we can absolutely do that. I mean, yeah, it takes time to do that. As we said, we spent 2 hours on it tonight, and we only looked at an acoustic guitar, bass, and a vocal. So, but yeah, we could definitely do that. We can definitely do that. I think that would be fun. I think we may as well, do as many of those as you guys want to see. We can do another live stream just dedicated to just that if you want. That would be really good. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. Martin says, thanks, David and Johnny. Johnny Gibe, too. This has been a great 3 hours. Great. Thanks, Martin, for joining us. I appreciate you hanging out. You always come and hang out with us, which is great. Martin says he'd like to see all three of us in a live stream one day. That would be cool. That would be cool. And we will do that. We will. David and the two Johnnies will get together and do a live stream together. I'm sure we will absolutely do that. Let's see who else. Thanks for high quality broadcast and for staying focused. It's very informative. Martin, thank you so much. Let's see. Anything else going on? Great presentation, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Bobby, for the kind words. Yeah, so people look genuinely pleased with what we presented this evening, which is always a good thing. Let me, you're going to done share your screen here. So let me go back to escape. I can escape that. And then if I go back to camera number 4, look at that. Side by side we are. See how about we're getting this thing down. We're getting it down, man. After 3 months of playing around with it, we can finally get things moving.
We don't need a vision mixer, do
Nah, we don't need none of that. We got it all together. Pro Mixing says, we want to say thank you for doing this. You're welcome. Let's see. Martin says, if the three of you ever form a real college, make it a southern France so I can live there. We will do that. Sure. No problem. So yeah, no, this was fun, Johnny. I think we covered a lot, and we did a lot of discovering tonight. I think the project page, that's great to see all those new features. I'm going to dive more into that myself. I think it was interesting listening to the different plugins. That was fun. I think we learned a lot there as well. And again, I think Presonus did a good job with those plugins.
Yeah, certainly.
I think they did a good job. Not bad at all. What else, guys? Anything else? We still got 37 people hanging with us, and we're at a little over 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 31 minutes and 47 seconds to be exact. What do you guys want to ask us? Ask now or forever hold your peace, or else we're going to wrap it up soon, because I know I have an early day tomorrow. And Johnny, I think it's already morning for you, isn't it?
It's 3:30 in the morning, and I have church in the morning. Well,
and Johnny's got to go to church in about 20 minutes. Say, Greg, thanks to both of you for sharing your knowledge. No, thank you for joining us. Music Production says, you're all still going? Yes, we're still here. Can you believe it? This is one of the longest live streams we've done. We haven't done this one this long. Yeah, this is the most people to show up for it, which is great. Let's see. Any questions? Any questions at all? Ask now. Ask now.
Ask now or forever hold your peace.
Yes, hold your peace. And we're going to be doing another interactive mixing session, Johnny, right? In I think it's in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
Where we're going to mix another song together, where you guys can all come on in like you're doing right now in the chat, and you guys will mix the song with us. If you don't know what that is, go back to my YouTube channel in the archive and watch one of the interactive mixing live streams. That was a lot of fun. We've done 2 of them so far, and they've gone off really good, and we've gotten 2 really good mixes by the people in the group. And maybe this time around, we'll use some of these new Fat Channel plugins. We may as well. We'll let people mix with those. Why not? We won't let them use just stock plugins. They have to use these specific plugins, so we could play around with them a little bit more. That would be fun. Too.
Yeah, John just said his first live stream was 4 hours. So we've got a record to beat there, Dave, I think.
Yeah, 4 hours. I don't think I can do 4 hours. I'll let Johnny hold on to that record. That's okay. You know what? I might have been on that live stream with him. I think early on when I first met Johnny, we did a couple together, and I might have been sitting on that one. I might have been involved in that. But I don't plan to do a 4-hour live stream unless you guys really want to ask a bunch of questions. We'll sit here as long as we have to, but that's a long time.
Oh, Johnny just said, I've been thinking about getting the Slate 14 a month deal.
It is a great deal, man. I'll tell you, for $14 a month, you get every analog style plugin you could pretty much ever need. I think I think I'm going to convert Johnny Gibe too to third-party plugins. Bobby's asking, David, if I was going to upgrade my computer, what would you suggest so I can use more third-party plugins? Well, what do you have now, Bobby? Again, Mac PC doesn't matter. I would get something with as fast of a processor as you can get. I would try to get something that has a minimum of 16 gigs of RAM, but something where you could go ahead and you can maximize the RAM as much as possible, because RAM is pretty inexpensive these days. So it all depends what you have. But, the thing with third-party plugins, depending on what you use, and someone asked earlier on in the chat, Johnny, about the universal audio. It's the part of the hardware that you need the hardware. Now you say, well, what's the advantage of the hardware? Well, the hardware, it's like the Studio 192. Think of it like that. It has a DSP chip inside of the universal audio hardware. So the plugins are not running on your CPU. They're running on the hardware, which allows you to put a lot more plugins in your session without taxing your computer. So yes, it's an interface, and yes, it's a piece of hardware, but there's a reason for it. And so if you're someone who uses lots of plugins, lots of analog style emulations, they can tax a CPU pretty quickly. So having the extra hardware helps relieve your computer. And so as far as what
Yep.
you upgrade to, it really depends on what you're comfortable with. If you currently use a PC, I would stay with a PC and just get as fast of a processor as you can. If you use a Mac, stay with a Mac. He says he has 4 cores, 16 gig, and when I try to use a tape machine across all the tracks, it slams my performance meter. Right. Well, a quad core, in today's, a quad core is a great machine, but, it's not a real fast machine nowadays. 3-4 years ago it was. 16
Yep.
gigs of RAM. If you can upgrade your RAM and get more RAM in your machine, that would be the first thing I would try. But yes, if you're depending on the tape machine, if you're going to put it on 20 or 30 tracks, it's going to bog down the CPU. And that's one of the advantages of using something like universal audio, because that problem goes away once you have, the hardware. And that's just it. But try to upgrade your RAM first. That could take care of some of your problem. But if you have a 4 core and if it's a machine that's 3, 4, 5 years old, you could have a tough time. The other thing you can do too is you don't have to put a tape machine necessarily across all the tracks. You can do it to a bus. Let's say all your drums, you can bus it and put the tape machine on the bus. It's not exactly the same, but it gets you the same effect. That'll help you too. So anyway, that's it. Yeah, Johnny Gibe's saying a quad core won't run that. You need at least an i5 with 16 gigs. Yeah, he's right. You need something a little fast. Johnny, I ran a quad core. I had a 2009 Mac Pro up until 2013 with a quad core in it, and it ran okay. But yeah, I was hitting it really hard. I mean, I think I had 64 gig of RAM in that machine. So I mean, I was really hitting it hard, and then that's why I upgraded to the new Mac Pro. So, yeah. But Bobby says that's what he's been doing. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you've been bussing everything out and putting one tape machine. That's the way to get around it. But if you're going to go with a computer, what I always tell everyone, when you're going to buy a new computer, whatever computer you think you need from a performance standpoint, try to up it a little bit. Overbuy the computer. So in 3 years, you're not having to constantly change out your computers. If it's in your budget and you can afford to do it. Try to buy as high end of a machine as you can. So if it's an investment over time, you'll save money that way. It depends on what you're going to do. So anyhow, Johnny says the quad core Macs were faster back then. Yeah, they might have been. I'm not too familiar with the PC stuff, so I don't know if the Macs were better performance back then. They might have been. You're probably right about that. So we still got 34 people here. We're running at almost 2 hours and 40 minutes. Let's see. Bobby says, yes, I am on the right track. I think I'm about to drop $2,000 on a new desktop. Okay. $2,000. Well, you could get a lot more in a PC for $2,000 than you can get for in a Mac for $2,000.
True.
Be aware of that. And so I don't know, Bobby, are you on a Mac or a PC right now? Are you hesitant to switch from one to the other? Because for $2,000, you can get a hell of a PC. I would think $2,000, you're going to get an iMac pretty much. And not even a high-end iMac for $2,000.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're already on a PC, you're on a PC, great. $2,000, you can get a hell of a PC. I would hit up Johnny Gibe and Johnny Lipsham here. They'll be able to direct you on exactly how to best spend that $2,000. I bet you can get a hell of a machine for that. So yeah, Johnny's saying you can even upgrade to an i7 4th gen for about $1,000. So there you go.
For under 100, I think he says there.
Oh, 100 does it say, or does it say 1,000? Oh,
Hun-
okay, yeah.
100.
Talk to Johnny Guy about PC stuff because he knows more about it than I do. When I have PC stuff, he's the person I go to. So I would ask him, and you may not need to spend $2,000. There you go. How about that? So any other questions? Anything else, guys? Johnny, do you have
I think-
anything else?
Yeah, I think Johnny actually meant under 1,000 rather than under
100. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was gonna say if he could do that for for $100, that'd be great. Martin says check out PC Audio Labs PC Audio Labs makes audio machines. Also, you could check out Sweetwater. They do the, what do they call it? The Creation Station.
The creation stations.
Yeah, they got some pretty they got audio specific built computers.
And if you're in the UK, I highly recommend a company called Scan Computers. They are UK based. They also work with Presonus as well, so they are very cool. I got my machine from them, and I ordered it, and they shipped it the next day. And if I needed to, they'd have a guy come and install it for free. So
that's pretty good. Yeah, if you're going to buy a computer specifically custom built for audio production, it would be great to buy from a company where you can get that kind of service.
yeah.
One of the problems with Mac is if I buy a Mac and something doesn't work with the audio, they're not coming to my house. They're just not. And that's just the way it is.
Mike Kruger says, I'd like to see an FAQ of known issues with 3.5.
An FAQ of known issues. That's a Johnny Gibe question.
I think he was earlier wanting to see a sort of top 10 of issues.
Known issues.
Yeah,
that might be would that be on the Presonus site? You think at this point? You think on the knowledge base or something there would be some stuff documented at that point?
Yeah. I think there are various threads on the Presonus forum that are kind of looking at that kind of thing.
I haven't noticed any bugs in it since I've been using it, really.
No, not me either.
So I'm sure there's not too many if there are. The only thing I did notice, though, I think there was a Melodyne issue. I did have a problem with Melodyne where it crashed. It seems to crash Studio One in the version of 3.5.
Yeah, I've heard maybe 2 or 3 people that have highlighted that as being an issue where they've maybe already had Melodyne on a particular track and then they've wanted to go and edit the Melodyne that they've done and it's crashed. I don't know if that's something that I don't know if that's something that's been around before because I don't use Melodyne all that often, but that was just the thing I noticed. Johnny wants to know if he can be Skyped in.
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. We can certainly try. I don't know if I'll get you on the screen there, but I'll try. Let me see. Can I add somebody? Add people.
Yeah, just add somebody to call.
I'll try anything once, Johnny. And there's my buddy Johnny Gibe. Skype updated. They changed the interface a little bit. Nice.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can call him. Skype mobile. Okay, how come it's not doing it? Oh, add.
Yeah, it's the plus button. There you go. Oh, there we go.
What, am I going to lose both of yous?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, why is it calling you? Oh, is it just Johnny?
No, yeah, you're adding Johnny to the call, I think is what we're trying to do.
Oh, because I see your logo on the screen, but I didn't call you, but I see Johnny at the top here. Come on, Johnny, you there?
Here we go.
Hello?
I hear him, but I don't see him. But as long as I can hear him.
I'm here.
There we go.
Where are you?
I am here in my daughter's room.
I don't see you yet. Oh, no, I see you. Hey, John.
Yeah, I am here in my daughter's room where I am every night after 8 o'clock. We sit together and we watch Batman together and before she goes to bed. But I was watching you guys while she's polishing her shoes over there. And there are a couple of issues that some people are seeing with Studio One 3.5. They're very small issues right now.
Okay.
The first one is that there are people that are actually rebooting and then losing their external devices. And I found out the fix for that just this afternoon. You have to actually go into, if you're on a PC, you've got to go into your settings folder and you got to delete the settings folder. There are some installs that are just corrupting certain parts of the settings folder that are causing that to happen.
Okay.
The other issue is with the newest update to Melodyne, like you mentioned, Dave. It's crashing every once in a while. The solution for that so far that I found is to actually uninstall Melodyne completely while Studio One is closed, and then reinstall it from the installer from the site, not your old installer.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's a good tip.
Yeah, there's something wrong with the old installer with 3.5. You got to get the new one.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So in total, I've upgraded for the people that I support on a regular basis here locally. There's 24 of them. I've upgraded all of them to 3.5. These are people that actually pay me to log into their systems every month and actually, do their updates for them so they don't have to do it, that kind of thing. So out of 24 people, I've successfully upgraded 23 with no issues. The only issue with the one person was the thing with Melodyne.
Okay, that's good to know. That's really good to know. I lost Johnny Lipsham here. I think he's on the line somewhere, but I can't see him.
I'm still here.
Oh, you still there? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't see you. I just see your logo and the little swirly thing swirling around. So I'm not sure what it is.
You both.
All
You both. So that's pretty cool.
You can or
Okay.
you can't.
I can. Yeah, I'm on my iPad too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I can. I just don't know. I don't want to hang up on Johnny and screw up. So I just figure I'll just leave it like this, seeing as because I know I'll screw this up if I click. I
And
wish.
I have to say, I watched the last half hour of your guys' live stream. It was awesome.
Oh, thanks,
got-
man. Yeah.
Johnny's got a much better grip on the mastering page than I do, so I learned actually a whole bunch. So appreciate that very much.
Yeah, no, he did a good job of that. Yeah, he knows it much more than I do. And then the first half we did a lot of comparison of the Presonus Fat Channel new plugins, the analog stuff, and we compared them to the Waves and the Universal Audio. That was fun. We did that for about an hour and a half.
I didn't see that part. How did that go?
It went well. It went well, right, John? I think it went good. What we found was we found that the Waves versions of the plugins were very similar to the Presonus ones. They were much closer in tone and in sound quality, where the
Nice.
Universal Audios seem to step out a little bit more. But we both agreed, and I think most people in the chat said, I think the Presonus ones, it's a hell of a job. I mean, they're pretty damn good.
Oh, yeah,
I think they're good.
For being a free update.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, it's a little unfair in a way to compare that to a $250 plugin.
Right.
So it's a little unfair to do that. But
The other thing is the fact that what am I trying to say here? The different algorithms and stuff. So they're probably about as close as they could get. Each of the programs use a different algorithm, because I know that Presonus uses something pretty unique as opposed to other algorithms out there. They're much better on CPU for some things. But you're probably just talking. Was it just like a little color difference, or was it like a major, like a volume difference?
No, not a volume difference. We compared the Pultec. Well, we did 3 different plugins. We did the Pultec emulation, and the Pultec seemed to be the biggest difference. Where I think Johnny and I both felt that the Universal Audio Pultec had a much more open sound. It had a much more where the Waves and the Presonus seemed a little darker and a little thinner. No matter how much even though we started with all the same settings and we tried to get things tonally to match up, we couldn't get either one of those plugins to sound as good as the Universal Audio Pultec.
Universal Audio works with a DSP chip, correct?
Correct. It's not on the
Got-
CPU of the computer. That is right.
So then they've got a lot more room for a much
Absolutely.
algorithm. the other two do. Okay, then that makes sense then.
And then the other thing is too, where it's what we talked about that particular plugin is that Universal Audio, because of the DSP chip, not only did they model the EQ, but they also modeled the input and output transformers, which I don't believe are part of the Again, I don't know that for a fact, but my assumption was because of the CPU taxing that they would cause, that Universal Audio, Presonus probably only modeled the EQ section. And so that could be the tonal difference right there.
That's where openness would be really evident, is if you're emulating those as well as the compressor itself, then you've got yourself a whole different.
Yeah, it's a little different. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but I would have been, like I said to Johnny, I would have been surprised if the Presonus plugin stacked up to the UA plugin. I would have been really surprised, because I just don't know that that's a fair assumption. But when we got to the compressors, they were a little more close, right, Johnny? I thought they were a little closer to each other.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
The EQ seemed to be the big standout.
Yeah.
But now I see Johnny on the screen, and I don't see Johnny Geib. Johnny Geib, you're still there, right?
Yep.
Okay, so somehow it switched. Who knows? Who cares? So we're all here. So it seemed like again, what I found from the Universal Audio plugins on all three examples, it just seemed like there was more depth and there was more of an open sound, and the waves and the Presonus seemed a little more boxy, a little more boxed in. But again, that could be a DSP thing. And we're talking about, and again, we put these on raw tracks with no other processing. We soloed the track. So, in the context of a mix, there's all that. So there's so many variables in that I don't know that, it's not a dead on fair comparison, but it was interesting just to see what are the differences. And there is a difference. And there should be a difference.
Definitely worth it. That's for sure.
But for a free plugin in the software, I don't know how you would expect much more than what we got. And they're very usable. I would say that the Presonus ones, they're extremely usable. I wouldn't say they're not good at all. There was a much better, me and Johnny discussed that it was a much better attempt at analog modeling than the first console shaper, not the new one, the first one.
I agree 100% with that.
Yeah.
That is, that totally better effort. And in fact, and maybe in some ways they should have waited.
Well, again, I think, for a DAW company to be going down this road in a real way, you got, I still think the console shaper wasn't bad, but there wasn't, when I compared that to like the Slate Virtual Console collection, there's no comparison. But this time around, the lines started to get a little closer. They're a little closer. And I think if they keep going down this road, and if their goal is to, as part of the Studio One package, is to offer more analog plugins, because they know that people buy them and they know that people want them. And if they can continue to improve on that, their ability to do that and make the program still lean and mean and not really kill the CPU, because that is the big thing there, is being able to create these plugins in a way that aren't going to drag the CPU down.
Right. Well, there's another advantage to them actually doing their own native stuff, is the fact when it comes to their controllers like the CS18 and the Fader Port 8, all of those assignments are actually going to be automatic rather than have to doing that with the third-party stuff. So there's an advantage for people that have those controllers as to where they would have to program into the FP8 the settings for their third-party plugins. If they can get something comparable in a native plugin, they don't have to even worry about that.
Yeah.
Right. It's a good point. So, so it was interesting. And a lot of people in the chat had said, could we on another broadcast take the Slate plugins and compare those to the Presonus ones, which we did not do to this time. But I said, yes, we could do that. And we also can do more of the, we could do more. I only did it on 3 tracks because, we were running about 2 hours. We did a lot of A-Bing, which was great. It was real informative, but we didn't do it on drums and the whole thing. So we'll do another broadcast where we'll do some more just to do it, just to see what the differences are. And it was good because I think it also, for the people in the chat, especially people who are not used to the analog emulations, you can start to, we really spent a lot of time on what to focus in on, how to hear the stuff, especially with compression. it kind of helps them better understand what are these compressors doing and being able to wrap their head around and hear it. Because once you can hear it, then you have all these options start to open up for you.
And you know, that's the hardest thing to teach people.
It is.
You can teach somebody the numbers. You can teach somebody where the dials are. You can teach somebody how to get track levels, but you can't teach somebody how to listen.
Right.
And things like this that you guys are doing with the A-Being and stuff like that's priceless for people that are just starting to get to learn, like the you know, like the Bobbies of the world out there that are just really now starting to get into plugins and stuff like that. The big thing about 3.5, I have to say, is the fact now that even people with slower machines can do more.
Yeah, I know. I realized that on your live stream the other day, and you're absolutely right. Someone was using like a dual core, and they
Right.
were. And I mean, that's insane, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, that's my good friend Robbie. And,
Right.
He got online a couple of times, and it's amazing. He had some stuff that was pulling at least 100%. It wasn't really necessarily spiking, but every once in a while it would. As soon as he did the update, now he's running about 30 to 40%, which still sounds like a lot, but that's a huge improvement for someone like him.
That's a massive improvement for anyone. That's a massive improvement.
Exactly. He can still only use like one VST instrument and a couple of other plugins, but he couldn't use anything yesterday.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So you go from nothing to something, right?
Yeah,
which
so,
is great. No, I really think that Presonus is, every time they do a release, they are pushing the envelope, and I really think they're trying to stay way out ahead. And I think they're accomplishing that. I really do. You don't even well, forget Pro Tools because they're not doing anything, but you don't see Steinberg even. You don't even see them really trying to, you know, they're probably the next in line. You know, Studio One, and then Cubase is probably right in that safe second spot. I don't even see them trying to do some of these things.
I've been involved now in 3 major releases with Presonus, just as far as being ready to do videos and being able to do a little bit of testing beforehand. And I have to say, this one, 3 went really bonkers when it first came out. But from the 2.6 release, the 3.0 release, and this release, this one has the least amount of bugs. And in fact, I can count all of the things that I found so far on one hand, and I still got 3 other ones to actually still kind of troubleshoot. I already figured out the first 2, and right now I have not seen a lot of complaints on anything. Dumping the settings folder seems to cure a lot of the anomalies for any issues that you might be having. Yeah, you've got to reset up all your presets will go away and your external devices will go away, but that's a small price to pay for the stability, and it only takes a few minutes to set some of that stuff up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point. So Martin says in the chat, the past 3 years have been frustrating, training my ears to hear these details. I'm impatient, but then the long run, it has been a great blessing. Yeah, Martin, we were all there, believe me.
Yeah.
And I know someone said a little earlier, we were doing a lot of soloing and they're like, oh, it's painful. That's the point. We picked tracks and we picked vocal tracks that weren't tuned, that were little dynamically all over the place, so you can hear it a little bit easier. But the only way you get there is by doing the exercise that we did tonight on your own, is listening, and by us throwing in different plugins and trying to explain what we're hearing, and then, you know, focus on this or focus on that. And so you notice tonight with the compressors, Martin, we didn't really talk about the compression portion of it as much. We talked about the tone of the compressor more than anything, because you can't hear, I mean, you can hear it if it's really overly compressing, you hear that breathing and pumping. But if you're just doing some light compression, you really can't hear that. What you're really listening for is the tone and what happens when things move forward and back in the mix. And so it just takes time, man. But you're on the right track. Just try to be patient. Yeah, you have to be, right? Bobby Harris says, I was amazed at what I can do after going through David's MME. Oh, thanks, Bobby. Yeah, I'm glad you like the Mixing Made Easy courses. We do a lot. What we did tonight, I spend 3 times as long on in the Mixing Made Easy courses. That's why they're 12 hours long.
You know, it's funny because there were no guys like us when we were learning. How painful is that?
No, it really wasn't. We're trying to cut down the learning curve for people.
Exactly. That's
Johnny, here's a question for you. Maybe Doug is asking, for Studio Live 32 mixers, Series 3, any news that you guys know about the UC control on Android? I don't. Johnny, do you?
No, I don't. I don't think there's any movement on that right now. I've heard rumors that there is something coming, but that's the best I can do. Anything that I hear is rumors. I feel pretty confident that something is going to come at some point because the demand is so high. If you go to
Yeah.
the Presonus answers area, it is right there in the top 10 of requests for a lot of people. So I would just say sit tight and be patient. I've heard more murmuring lately than I have in the past, so something's going on.
Right. Robert. Oh, Robert, thanks for stopping in. You got to go to bed. Okay, cool. Thank you. Martin says, yeah, David, that's why I've been here. Tonal usage with compressors is really, to me, more important than gain reduction.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, they all compress. And we'll do more of that stuff in the future, Martin, for sure. Because I really think, once you can wrap your head around that and you can hear that, the possibilities are endless. And we didn't do that too much tonight because, again, this thing could have been 12 hours long. But we did talk. We did talk a little bit about like those 1176s, the Presonus one, which is really the blackface emulation. And as I said with the Universal Audio and Waves, when you know, there's 3 or 4 different versions of the 1176, and they all sound very, very different from each other tonally. And so, depending on what you're going for in your mix, will depend on what tool you're going to pick. Bobby says, "Great, yep, go ahead, Johnny. I'm sorry."
That said, of the compressors we tested tonight, I think the 1170s, the Waves 1176 and the Presonus 1176 were paper thin, hardly between them.
I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. Yep, you're right.
Johnny said something when I first came into the session that I thought was priceless. He said something to the that amounted to "don't overthink it," and that is probably the best advice that you can give to somebody. If you try to overthink it and you try to force yourself to do things, you are not going to get anywhere. And I know Martin says that he's been going for 3 years. Well, tell him how long it took you to learn this. I know it took me about 5 or 6 years
easily
before I comfortable playing my mix for anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
So Bobby, you're still a youngin'.
Yeah, and you're right. Once we're going, when you're beginning, you tend to overthink it more because you're trying to learn. But believe me, when this stuff starts to click and you sit down to mix, trust me when I tell you, your instincts are going to take over and you're just going to know where to grab and what to do. You're going to know, you're going to hear an acoustic guitar like we did tonight. You're going to go, in the context of a mix, we did it in solo. That's the compressor I need for that. You're just going to know, and you're not going to think about it. When I sit down and do a mix, I don't get out all these compressors and start auditioning them. It'd be 50 hours to do a mix.
You go for what you know.
What I know and what I know from experience works on what tracks for what songs, and you will get there, Martin. I promise you. Going through this painstaking exercises that we do all the time will push you there faster. And once you get there, you won't have to worry about overthinking things. You'll just know what to do.
And not doing it alone is key. I mean, this kind of thing really helps more people realize.
Yeah, I totally concur with that. That it can take a long time. It can be painful, and your early mixes can be less than impressive to even yourself, let alone anybody else.
Well,
but the thing is, the only person that you should compete with is yourself. I when I listen to another mix engineer, if I listen to one of Dave's mixes or if I listen to one of Johnny's mixes, I'm not putting my mixes adjacent to them, going, they're better than me. Oh, Johnny's better than me at this. Or, I don't do that. The only person I compete with is me. I will listen to my album that I released 3 years ago, compare it to my EP that I released last year, and the difference between the mixes is night and day. They're better.
Right.
You know what? That's great advice. Something I try to tell people: don't spend a lot of time on the same song. Get that song as good as you can and put it aside and start a new one. Then when that one's done, you put that aside and you start a new one. And then you do that for about 4 or 5 mixes. And what you end up with is an intelligible history of your progress. And if you don't hear any progress, then you might want to rethink how you're doing things. But I guarantee you, 99.9% of the time, your 4th mix is going to far blow away your first mix.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. And I've told people set a timer. Once you get past your edit, once you organize your session and you're done, because that's not mixing. Once you're done editing and organizing and color coding, set your timer. Set, if it's an average session between say 10 tracks and say 24, 30 tracks, set it for 2 hours.
That's a great idea.
And don't worry if you don't finish. It's okay. Just mix for 2 hours and set it aside. Don't let yourself, like you said, overthink this. And the problem with digital stuff and all these plugins and all this stuff in the computer is you can tweak till you'll be dead and you'll be still tweaking. You got to know when it's done. And again, a lot of that is instinct and a lot of that is just experience. And so set yourself a timer, 2 hours, I'm going to be done. Or if you're going to mix and say you mix your drums first, say I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to mix my drums.
Right.
And just go for it. And don't worry, does it sound perfect? It's never going to sound perfect. Okay?
Right. Start getting sick of listening to the song, you should tell yourself that you're done and it's time to move on.
It's time to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it'll just get silly otherwise.
I'll tell you how I know when I'm done.
How do you know when you're done? When your wife tells you to, right?
Well, there is that, but I also have one of these.
Oh yeah.
And one of these. And what I do is I roll this chair to the back of my room, which is not very far.
Yeah.
Doesn't take me long.
About 7 and 8
Yeah, exactly. I roll it back. Before I do that, I hit play. I sit at the back with my notepad and my pen, and I note down things that I hear that need adjusted. I play the whole song all the way through, and I do not touch anything apart from my pen and my pad until I've listened through and I've made my notes. Then I roll back into my mix position, and I make only those adjustments, and then I rinse and repeat. I go back until there is nothing on my list. Everything is checked off.
That's
there you go. It's a great system.
I have a trick for you guys to try in your next mix live stream. I do this with everything that I mix, and not a lot of people practice this. When you actually feel like you've got the mix somewhat done, start dropping your control room volume low and all the way almost till it's off. And try to focus on the last thing you hear when the mix disappears. And that last thing that you hear when the mix disappears, that's the one you lower a little bit. Then you do it again, and you bring it down, and you bring it down, and you bring it down. Maybe it's a vocal, maybe it's a bass or something like that, and then it goes off. Then you go back and you bring that down a little bit. And the object is to have the entire song disappear at its lowest volume all at the same time. It's not hugely accurate, but it's a way that I actually can call a mix done.
That's a great tip. I never heard of that. That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. Let's see, a couple people in the chat. Jesse says, good to not use compressors just for the sake of using compressors. Some mixes sound great with very little or no compression. Very good, Jesse. Yep. I don't know if you were part of the last interactive mixing session that me and Johnny Scotland did, but what did we talk about? We talked about using a compression EQ, any plugin. There has to be a purpose. Don't just put a compressor on a track because you saw a billion guys on YouTube put compression across all the tracks. There are many times where I don't compress tracks at all. I do the last couple of quick mixes that I've done that are coming up in the next few months. We didn't compress the drums at all because that track didn't need it. I think I did a little on the drum bus. That was it, about 2 dB. I didn't compress anything. And so you're absolutely right. Before you put any plug-in on, and we talked about this before, you take all your faders and do your static mix, get them close, and listen. Take your hands, sit on your hands. Don't put a plug-in on. And when you're listening to your kick drum,
dance.
Say to yourself, what does that kick drum need? Does it need to be compressed? Does it need to be EQ'd? What do I like? What don't I like? Just don't put plugins on and start twisting knobs, because then you start getting yourself going down the wrong path. So it's a great point, Jesse, and we've made that point before. So thanks for reiterating that.
Absolutely. That's definitely.
Let's see. Martin says, I thought the silver compressor was better on bass than on guitar, and the black seemed better on guitar. Well, again, that's what we talk about, Martin, where Certain instruments, you'll take the same compressor and take a different version of it, and it sounds better on one instrument or another. That's the tone thing again, and you're absolutely right. I'm glad you're able to hear that. So now, if you were able to hear that, you are on your way to understanding what some of these analog emulation plugins can do for you, aside from compression. Okay?
But his statement alone proves that he's using his ears.
Using his ears, absolutely right. And there's no wrong answer to it.
Right.
What you just said, it sounds to you, someone may have the exact opposite opinion. There's no rules. You're right. Let's see. Martin says, yeah, setting a timer is a suggestion that Graham Cochran put out a while back, and it's true. Yes, Graham is a smart guy, and I didn't know he did that. But see, if Graham says it's true, it's got to be true. So you ought to try that.
Yeah, he's one of the pioneers of all this. That's
He
for
is.
sure.
He is. Let's see. Martin says, also, I listen to my fiance, and she's not a musician or a mixer. So if she hears the song as a customer or a fan or someone listening in their car, radio would be hearing. That's right. Playing the music for someone who's not an engineer. How does it sound to them? Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and for some guys, the wife will tell you when it's done.
Right, exactly. It's dinner time. It's done. And also, don't get hung up, too. Someone made the point early on, Johnny, I think in the beginning, where they said, the average, we were talking about guitar simulation plugins, but it's the same concept. The average listener no one listens to your mix and go, oh, that's an LA2A on the vocal. Nobody knows that. Does it sound good or doesn't it sound good? I mean, we're all audio geeks, so we like this stuff and we like talking about this stuff and doing this stuff, but you got to remember who you're mixing for. Does the mix sound... I think Johnny made a good point with that suggestion about lowering the mix. At the end of the day, can you hear all the instrumentation?
Right.
Can you close your eyes and pick off each instrument and hear it clearly?
Yeah.
And the levels are right and the dynamics are right, then it doesn't matter what plugins you use. It really doesn't.
That's
it really, really doesn't.
Guys, I got to get going, and I want to thank you for Skyping me in.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm going to have to go back and listen to the first hour and a half because I was only here for like the later part. But, as always, with all of the stuff that's out there like this, great video, guys. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And still got 28 people hanging around. I'm sure some of that is because you joined us, so people stuck around.
Oh, well.
And we're running at about we're at about 3 hours and 15 minutes. So this is our longest live stream for sure. And it's the most people we had. What did we have, Johnny? 61 people at our highest point, which was really, really cool. And then most of the time we had about 50 up until about the last hour. So it was really successful. People were really, really into what we were doing tonight. So that's really great.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, you take care and goodbye to everybody. I'll see everybody on the 6 o'clock live stream on Monday.
Yes. See you. Have a great weekend, my friend.
Cheers, John.
Bye.
You're stuck.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I let him hang up. Okay. So he's gone. So, well, that was cool. Yeah, cool. So does anyone have anything else? Because we are getting on here, and it's probably time to wrap this up. Let's see. Let's see. Woodbeast on YouTube. When I listen to a CD, say the Beatles, and you mix the song, how does the sound compare? I'm not sure what you're asking me. When I mix a song, how does it compare to a Beatles mix? Is that what you're asking? Oh, mine's better than a Beatles mix. That's
an interesting question because the way George Martin approached mixing back then is very, very different to how we would do it today. Like, the stereo was something that was very, very new concept.
Right.
And so oftentimes George Martin would put the drums on one side and everything else on the other, or the vocals on one side and everything else on the other side. So there were different things going on there, and certainly the way they used compression was very, very different to the way we would use it now. So
the technology was different.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So he's saying no, the sound quality.
Oh right.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a different thing. Than way back then. You're talking about what, the 60s, right? So, and again, everything back then was done in a real, was really done in a real analog studio. We're doing things with plugins that are supposed to emulate the real thing. A little bit different than the real thing.
Oh yeah.
And what's 75% of a great mix? I say it all the time. It's the musicianship, Yeah. So you could have recorded the Beatles in any one of our basements, and they would sound amazing. Right? It really, the musicianship is 75% of a really good mix, and a song, and a good song, you know, which with the Beatles, there you go. What else can you say about that?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so that's really it, guys. I think we're at almost 3.5 hours now, and so I think it is time to call it a day. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, it's like 4:15 here. Thank you, Johnny. You just corrected me. It was a Capitol Records idea. Yeah. Yeah, not specifically George Martin.
Right. So once again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This was a lot of fun. We will do another one next month as well, and we'll do interactive mixing in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned to the Facebook page. You'll see all those updates there. And we will see you soon. And again, this will be in the archive. It'll be up on YouTube tomorrow. So if you want to go back and rewatch anything, or if you joined us late and you didn't see the first half or even the second half of the live stream, go back and watch it. And again, thanks so much for participating. Any parting words, Johnny?
I'm exhausted, but it's been a whole load of fun this evening.
Has been a whole load of fun.
Great, and actually really informative to put these new plugins up against, you know, plugin manufacturers that have been in the game for very, very long time, like Waves and Universal Audio have been right there from the start. And, you know, Presonus just jumping in with fresh feet. And actually, you know what? They are really good.
They're really good. They are really good. So go and experiment with the Fat Channel yourself and play around with these plugins, and we'll do some more of this in the future. So we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Bye.